OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
All right, bang on 7:30 this Monday morning. We are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed after a great weekend. We hope that you are too, wherever you're watching us or wherever you're listening to us this morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM, Ireland's Sports Breakfast Show. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. 087 9 180 180. And OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Fresh from his exploits on South William Street over the weekend, it's Owen Sheehan. How are you, Owen?
I can officially distance myself from that. Literally went down home for the weekend, and never have I been more glad to distance myself from a situation. So that's comunicado oficial this morning.
That was your crew, though, right? They were your people. You were looking at that going, oh, there was proper FOMO, I'd say.
Listen, I was elected onto the green flag staff of my primary school. I would not stand for the rubbish that was left behind on Sunday morning.
Wow, okay, that's new news that's breaking this morning about the green flag. But, you know, it's, I would say, in character.
You would, with what?
With you. You are an environmentalist at heart. It's true, Captain Planet.
Yes, I am Captain Planet, and I'll be leading the charge once everybody realises that it's an important issue again, once everybody's vaccinated. Okay,
cool. But did you have any FOMO? I mean, apart from the litter, like the fact that people were actually having crack?
Oh yeah, of course. Like, I mean, if like I had FOMO when people were having the crack in Melbourne, even though I've never been to Australia in my life. I was like, God, if only I happened to make a different decision in my life. I will have FOMO no matter what happens. So, yes, of course it is.
And were there scenes in Kerry similar, but just they were smart enough not to film them?
Correct.
Right.
Like, I mean, we just this massive debauched Champions League final party in Kerry is what we endured.
The whole county, essentially.
Correct, absolutely. Coming together to celebrate as well. Like, Gaelic football is good again. Like flag waving, people on shoulders, all this sort of stuff. But no camera phones down there. And
as one of the appointed voices of your generation, what is your hot take on the scenes over the weekend?
My hot take on it, like, I mean, oh dear. Like, I do think it's possible to think that it is possible to pick up your rubbish while also thinking it's possible to be better provided for when it comes to bathrooms and for bins and for public spaces. Yeah. So I think both of those things. I do think the wreckage on Sunday morning was disgraceful, but I also think that some of the tut-tutting is also similarly disgraceful is too strong a word, but just quite contradictory on a number of different levels.
It's possible to wish that we were better governed, and it's also possible to wish that people weren't such pigs.
You've put it better than I possibly could, right there. That's exactly it, really. But maybe at the same time, you think who actually goes out on a Saturday afternoon and thinks to themselves, must bring a roll of black bags with me, or must bring a backpack. Now, in fairness, I mean, you just hold them in your hands and you walk home with them rather than putting them in a bag.
Yeah,
so
put them in the bags that you brought them with.
Oh, well, there is that actually, yeah. That is a very valid point. You tend to get bags in shops, yeah.
7:33 this morning. If you've got a hot take on the weekend shenanigans, we'd love to hear from you. 087 9 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Of course, you can leave a hashtag. Sorry, the hashtag is OTBAM, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. We're going to talk Champions League final reaction with Mark Lawrenson at around about 7:55. We've got hurling with Aidan Fogarty at around about 8:15. We're going to hear from Michael Meehan and Andy Moran, who were both at games for us yesterday. The Lions depth chart is coming your way with Alan Quinlan at around about 8:40. We've got Gaelic football with Anthony Moyles, and then reaction from the weekend at 9:30 as well. But it's time now for the Gillette performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performance was just lacked that intensity.
So every Monday morning we kick the show off with the performance rankings. This is the most important thing that anybody who has been achieving anything on any field globally can win on a Monday morning right here on OTBM. But it's your chance to win as well, because we're going to give you the chance to win a Gillette starter pack. All you got to do is send us in your suggestions for the performance rankings on OTB AM. And at the end of the show, we will announce a winner. So who should make Monday's performance rankings? We want to know the good, the bad, and the grand, the meh. So we're going to start with the red. Who's in the bad? Fairly obvious stuff from this, I think, from the weekend. Biggest game in world football, biggest moment to show that yes, all the billions and billions of money that we have had pumped into this company, essentially at the petrol tank, has been worthwhile. But no, it has not been worthwhile, Manchester City. You are in the red this morning.
Well, both petrol tanks can't be winners on the day, it turns out. So Chelsea certainly will feel that it was all worthwhile. Manchester City, not so. That's what happens when there can only be one winner. And maybe that will prove costly when a number of different states invest in football and realise actually we can't have it every single year. Manchester City realising that at the moment. They are first up in the red this morning. A number of different things that we can get into here about why this was such a bad evening for Manchester City. On a statistical level, the fact that they posted their worst expected goals tally of the entire season would explain why they put in such a bad performance. And yet, most of the discourse in the aftermath of the game was why Manchester City elected to play without Fernandinho and Rodri. This old chestnut of Pep Guardiola potentially putting too much thought into a big game has come up, and maybe not enough actually about understanding why he arrived at the decisions that he arrived at. We had some very strong recent evidence that this might happen in this game, that Chelsea would do one on Manchester City, because they did it twice already in the FA Cup semi-final and in the Premier League. 2 games which may not have seemed important at the time, but they were 2 competitive football games involving Manchester City. Pep Guardiola does not like to lose, and he would have seen both of those games as proper testing grounds, not some sort of cloak to shield what he was going to try and do at the weekend, proper testing grounds. So Pep Guardiola had clearly seen what he had done in those 2 games and decided to not do that thing again, because of course he had lost both of those games. If you look at the Premier League game between the sides, Rodri started in that game, and if you look at the FA Cup game between the sides, Fernandinho and Rodri both started that game. So maybe that explains why he went without both of them at the weekend. And essentially, as I say, the reason why they lost the game might not be because of the absence of those 2 players, but because they didn't post a high enough XG or create enough chances, work Edouard Mendy enough.
But why did they not create enough chances? Why did they not have a higher XG? It's because the team was completely unbalanced and they hadn't tried this before. They had no frame of reference.
Yeah, like once this season, before Saturday night, was when they played a game without either Rodri or Fernandinho, and I thought Fernandinho was brilliant against Paris Saint-Germain in the leg he did play, and that sort of edge that he brings to proceedings goes beyond the statistical line that you're going to see on the pitch. It winds up the opposition, it creates more tension than the opposition would want in certain areas, and maybe there's a material case to be made that his anticipation is N'Golo Kante-like, and he can stop that pass from Mason Mount through to Kai Havertz, and maybe it stays 0-0, and it doesn't matter what Manchester City are posting XG-wise, because they can take the game to extra time then. 100% see that point, but I'm just trying to understand why Pep made that decision, because sitting there on Saturday, you're like, okay, this is clearly not the right decision, and then very quickly you realise that you're not Pep Guardiola, and he's clearly put a lot of thought into this and has something going on in his brain that has made him think that this was the right decision. So I'm just trying to understand why he arrived at this point.
There's a ghost in his brain. There's like a yawning chasm in his soul into which he needs to fill something that is him, that is his and his alone, some creation. Because he was so praised for the quality of the football that Barcelona team played, he is seeking that similar spectral existence. It's a different plane from merely winning a football match that you and me would be happy with, and that's why we're obviously nowhere near that level of...
That's the only reason.
Like, what else is it? What else is this? Like, what could... When you've got a team that is the best team in Europe, that is playing really well, that is in really excellent form, why would you go away from that, which you know works?
Because he got spooked by what had happened in the previous 2 games.
But did he not play centre forward in those 2 games as well? I mean, I don't have those 2 team sheets in front of me, but everybody, certainly in the analysis that we've done, he played a centre forward in both of those games, and so therefore, like, I think Jesus played in both those games.
He did.
So, and as a number 9, and the whole thing was like, let's see the team without the number 9 play, where you've got your false 9, but you've got your defensive midfielder there. And as you talk about setting the tone, particularly against a team who are going to be nervous, okay, so in N'Golo Kante, they have somebody who has literally played in all the biggest games in the world and who knows exactly what it's like to be at this level. So he wasn't going to be nervous. But there were a lot of other players in that team who are very young and so therefore are looking around. And if somebody kicks N'Golo Kante early on, damages him somehow, and that's your Fernandinho, and it's like there's a bit of a battle going on, and suddenly he's and I don't know. It just seemed to me like there was like fairly obvious pre-match, uh-oh, has he done it again? Yes, he's done it again. And it's not the first time he's done it, and it's not the second time he's done it in big European games where you're like, just pick your best team. Your players are the best. Just back your players. In a way, like Tuchel's getting all this credit for like, oh, everybody knew exactly what they were supposed to do. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, but they also, they rode their luck quite a bit. There were some last minute, last gasp tackles and challenges that prevented goals. And that's what you need to do to win these big games when you are what looks like an inferior team. But anyway, yeah, definitely in the red for me. And some of the players too. I don't think the players, you know, the stuff about the formations is important. I absolutely accept that, and it created chances and it gave Chelsea pockets of space because they hadn't worked on it that much. But they're still some of the best players in the world, and they did not perform to their level.
No, they didn't.
It's a combination thing here.
It is. I just feel that with a different selection of players, there would have been a similar lack of output to a degree. I wouldn't be surprised if we were sitting here this morning looking at a similar result despite Fernandinho having started and saying,
that's interesting.
His energy maybe couldn't match Mason Mount's.
In which case it's the players on City's responsibility to win the game, and you feel like they didn't do it anyway.
I think so. Like that's certainly where I think Saturday night, as you say, you look at the team sheet, you're like, right, there's your narrative straight away. No matter what way this goes, we can essentially blame or praise Pep Guardiola for this. That's it sorted. And then you actually see the game materialise and I guess different form lines from specific players manifest themselves, and it just seems that narrative has been stuck with in the aftermath of the game. I'm not saying it's not true, and I'm not saying that Pep Guardiola got his team right. I just think that the players do have to take a good bit of the responsibility as well. Now, of course, there were like terrible moments of luck from Manchester City's perspective. Like their best player broke his face. Like that is not a great situation to be in any final. Now, in fairness, it was deep into the game, and there was evidence at that point that Chelsea had done one on Manchester City again, or had at least got the upper hand to a point. There was also a situation where late in the game, Kyle Walker turns into Rory Delap, and you're like, what has happened to the calm, composed, death by a thousand cuts nature to this Manchester City team? And you do come away from it thinking that this is a team that, of course, will have the possibility of dominating the Premier League again next season. But when Pep Guardiola is faced with a big Champions League final again in 12 months' time, potentially, do you back him to do something similar? Do you back these players to do something similar? This has become a mountain at this point.
Well, all the papers, and we'll talk about this in the Chelsea section, are talking about the investment that's coming, the next 200 million that Chelsea are going to be able to spend, because they'll have the annual amount of money that Abramovich is clearly going to be invested in spending, and then all the extra money that they're going to be able to raise from selling those players who are fringe players in the squad or who are already out on loan. So that squad is going to get significantly better. And so, say for example, they had a striker in that first half, they could have been 2 or 3-0 up, and some of those young players are going to flower into truly world-class players. Like Reece James is as good as Trent Alexander-Arnold was, it looks like, at that stage of his career. Sorry, they're probably about the same age, but in terms of the amount of games that he played for the first team, he was sensational the other night. Mason Mount, obviously still growing into his role and understanding what the game is because he's so young, but clearly brilliant. You've got Havertz, who I do think will be a success at that stage, and then there's 4 or 5 others who you could kind of factor into there as well. Even Billy Gilmore, who's like dressing around or jumping around the changing room afterwards, going, "I could get in this team." Like, you know.
Well, if you go to, like, I know we'll get to Chelsea in a moment, but like the players that they didn't use at the weekend, like Hakim Ziyech is one that certainly sticks off the substitutes list to me because he was so good in that FA Cup semi-final against Manchester City, like, which for me is a significant moment in this season where we were like, hold on a minute, is this actually going to be this great modern rivalry, especially in the context of there being a Champions League final coming down the tracks? And as it turned out, it absolutely was. Now, they replaced Ziyech and had enough threat down that left-hand side, as it turned out, to destroy Manchester City on Saturday night on a number of occasions as well. But these are the sort of players that will step up for Chelsea potentially next season, will be completely biting at the heels of players who are in that starting 11. You got Callum Hudson-Odoi in there, Billy Gilmore, as you mentioned, Marcus Alonso didn't play, Zuma's in there, Giroud's in there. Like, it's a brilliant squad. They're going to strengthen as well, and like there will always be this lingering fear that Roman Abramovich will do something crazy if things just dip a little bit next season. But there's also this maybe a case to be made more than ever that there is a manager here now that Chelsea might forgive for a poor start to a season if it does happen.
This is not Roberto Di Matteo.
Exactly. It's a far different standard of manager and a far different reputation and far more charisma. And I presume, well, maybe not far more charisma, but... Really? Okay, we can go there. I'm just thinking about poor old Roberto.
Okay. It's a weird kind of charisma that Tuchel has. If you're... Tell me a bit more about your man love for Thomas Tuchel there on. This is an interesting little...
Well, he's just... I don't know.
Wow, so charismatic. That's not... I've never heard anybody say that about Tuchel.
Really?
Yeah. I wouldn't call it charisma, would you?
I don't know. Maybe it's the wrong. Maybe it's the wrong turn of phrase. But like he's not Jurgen Klopp charisma. That's for sure. But there is a sort of I don't know. There's a lovable nerdiness to him, and you can just see.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it's communicated in quite a charismatic way. I think.
Okay. He's a good communicator. He's the geek's geek.
Yeah, I think he's more than just a good communicator. I think he has to have some level of inspiration about him, right? I think which can only come from a level of charisma in that dressing room.
I don't know. I think he might just be a grown-up. He might just really understand football and be able to communicate that. Like, that's the first thing that strikes me. It's like, you guys are going to defend, you're going to play midfield, and you're going to attack, and this is how we're going to do it. And very detail-oriented when he's talking to the players, which is, it seems, the complete opposite of Frank Lampard and his, like, individual errors, you know? Individual errors costing this team a lot. It did cost the team a lot. It cost the team a league this year that they could have given us a title race if they'd had Thomas Tuchel in. Anyway, look, let's not get into the wormhole of whether or not Thomas Tuchel is charismatic.
It's a good poll. Is Thomas Tuchel charismatic? Yes or no? Vote now or forever hold your silence. Next up in the red is UEFA. Like, what a Champions League we've had. Once again, it's almost just become normalised at this point. Even with the absence of fans up until the final, it was still probably better than most of the football we watched all season.
So let me set the context for this. So we're coming off a really good Champions League final where there was attacking play, vibrancy. It wasn't the Liverpool Spurs Champions League final. Everybody thought was really boring, unless you're a Liverpool fan. The neutrals were like, oh, crap game. But this game, I don't think any neutral saw was a crap game. So they've just come off the back of that. They've saved football by slashing the dream of the European Super League from the super clubs. Why are you putting them in the red?
Because they are tinkering with something that is near perfection. As we're going to get into here a little bit in the amber, there are so many sporting structures that are so obviously flawed. Through no fault of the sporting organisations own. Sometimes it's just tradition gets in the way of, I guess, progressiveness and actually common sense on a number of occasions. UEFA, though, have this golden egg, which is the Champions League, which is commercially successful beyond the point of belief, I'd imagine, if you went back in time and told UEFA chiefs 50 years ago that this is what it will become. And that is also ridiculously enjoyable, that all these teams come together, treat it more importantly than their domestic leagues in some occasions, the best players in the world, all in this, and in a format that just works, that creates enough drama, with the exception of the group stage, but we'll get over that. It is as near perfection as a competition as UEFA are ever going to have, and here they are tearing it up, about to install a Swiss system in a couple of years. And away goals, sure, this really important moment of all of our childhoods being snatched away from us just like that. I mean, maybe it will make for a better spectacle, but what is rare is wonderful is what I would always say when it comes to extra time and penalties, and away goals always made those two things way more of a rarity. It also made far more ties a complete roller coaster, where like you look at Lucas Moura's goal, for example, against Ajax, turning certain defeat into progression into the next round, into the Champions League final. That like the sort of superpower of a away goal is now going to be completely obsolete. And maybe I'm just a little bit wistful, and maybe this will actually be a good thing, because there are certain times when especially there's an underdog who's trying to fight back and they're up against an away goal from a better team, and you're like, oh, I'd love a bit of extra time here. But I think that's actually just short-termism. I think over the passage of time, we actually remember the great away goals moments as much as we remember a penalty shootout or extra times. Yeah,
I'm with you 100%. I think that too much messing around, too much changing what is actually working very well. And in our next slot, I think you're wrong not to blame the organisation, because the organisation needs to show leadership. In this instance, they're not showing leadership. I don't know what Arsene Wenger's point was when he was saying that this will lead to more attacking football. I don't really understand. And look, he obviously knows more about preparing teams for away matches, but why would you bother attacking if you're an inferior side against a better team away from home? There's literally no point. You park that bus. You park that bus for 90 minutes, for 120 minutes, and you get your draw, you get your 0-0, you get your penalties if it's the second leg. Like, the whole notion as well that, oh, goals count more, shouldn't count more. It's the same for both sides. In 2 legs, you have 90 minutes on both sides. Maybe what you do then is you stop away goals counting in extra time. I could be down with that little tweak, but
maybe it's not fair. And but who cares? is sort of the way I've been thinking about it the last couple of days. Is that I like this thing, and I think a lot of people like this thing, and it was kind of fun. And is that a reason enough to keep it? Probably not. Maybe fairness is more important. But the away goals has been slowly eroded from the League Cup. But
we're getting out of time. The producer's getting antsy.
Let's move on to the amber, which is GAA structures. The reason why it's an amber is that there's a lot of green shoots coming from the GAA structures so far this summer, where we have what I think is the greatest competition in intercounty football being halved, which makes it even more chaotic, more turbulent. Then you throw it into brilliant conditions right in the middle of summer. Then you throw it right on the heels, well, the opposite of the heels, right in the toes of the championship this year, which means there's no room for messing, no room for keeping your cards close to your chest. Everybody's fit, everybody's raring to go. And we've just had this explosion of brilliant football over the last few weeks. We've spoken quite a bit on this show about the Ulster teams maybe playing ball in a more attractive manner. But really, is it actually just down to the fact that the conditions are better, they're playing teams of a similar standard, the stakes seem higher, and preparations are nigh for the biggest competition of all, which is the championship in just a few weeks' time. This has led to this brilliant few weeks of football. On the downside, what we have is the realisation that we will go back to normal next year, or something that resembles 2020-2019, again, awaiting what happens in Congress later on this year. And then on top of that, we have this story this morning around venues. Angry Joy Stables home game for Monaghan, a joke, for example, reads the front of the Irish Independent sports section. Whenever we stumble upon something good, there is always this sense that something is not quite right with it, or something wrong is going to happen eventually. No good things in the GAA can ever be for real, is the takeaway from this year. But maybe not. Maybe things change down the line. Maybe this will become a blueprint for the future of the GAA. What we're seeing right now should be the championship. This should feed in some shape or form into the destination of Sam Maguire in any given year, in my opinion.
So just explain that. You want the best teams playing against each other in summer, irrespective of what province they're from.
Correct, absolutely. And if the provincial championships ends up being the league, aka the curtain raiser, months out from the championship, then so be it. Everybody can have their cake. But the importance of the provincial championship, which is now going to put the brakes on the excitement for a few weeks after 2 weeks' time, that's just going to be a complete buzzkill for everybody. Again, speaking selfishly here, I'm just speaking from a fan's point of view who wants to see good football. But I think a lot of people may feel that as well, that really that this is kind of putting an excellent competition first, the best competition first, then the worst competition second, and then the all-right competition last, which is the All-Ireland series of the championship. It should be the complete opposite way, where the best competition comes last, when the players are at their fittest and when the stakes are at their highest.
Okay, very quickly, the last two.
Brentford, going back up, they finally won their playoff final after losing to Fulham last year. I mean, I think people are very familiar with the Brentford story at this point. It's going to be like themselves and Norwich coming up is really exciting from a Premier League standpoint, because it feels that those two teams have got promoted in a really effective way, that they have a sustainable model. Norwich's sustainability probably comes from the fact that they've been relegated a number of times and are now playing a really attractive brand of football. Brentford's sustainability comes from, obviously, their massive reliance on analytics over the past few years. People don't need to be told about this. Everybody knows the story inside out. But you look through some of the players that they've sold over the last few years. Like last summer alone, Ollie Watkins for a 30 million fee and Saeed Benrahma for a 20 million pound fee. They are making proper cash off proper scouting, and you'd imagine that the players they'll start scouting from next season will be better, and the money they'll start raking in will be even bigger, which will allow them to put a foothold on the bottom of the Premier League and potentially stay up. Really excited to see them in the Premier League, and they were excellent on Saturday. Ivan Toney is an outstanding player, and if you're a supporter of a certain Premier League club, part of you might have wanted Brentford to lose the game so that Ivan Toney could perhaps be signed by our Premier League team, but he's going to have to stay with Brentford, and they're going to have a hell of a shot of staying up next season.
All right, so Brentford are in green at the weekend, also Chelsea in green at the weekend, but we're going to talk about Chelsea in just a moment with Mark Lawrenson. That is this week's performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
We're going to be back in one moment talking with Mark Lawrenson.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast? If not, here's some of what you've missed over the last week.
Just talking about Moyles, he lost 3 of his back 4 within a week of taking the job. I bet he phoned up Fergie and said thank you very much.
You want the team to push on, and equally you don't want to hear they signed 8 new strikers.
I've warned them off. That's all they're allowed
That's
now
plenty.
until the next year, yeah.
I tell you, if I was in management, I wouldn't go to Spurs now, Nathan. No way. I think Brandon Rodgers would be mad to go to Spurs.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
When you look at the Keane you first met at Forest to the Keane that you left at United, how different was he?
Oh, completely different player. I mean, I knew him. I'm not sure how old he was. Might have been 19 at Forest. I think it was his first, might have been his second full season.
Yeah, second season, yeah.
Second season. His engine was ridiculous. I mean, the way I played, I came off a centre-half, controlled balls. I needed midfield players that were going to run past me to give a question mark to the centre half. Are they going to pick me up, or are they going to pick the runner up? And Keane was fantastic like that. You know, he had such an engine that every time the ball came up to me, he'd be running past me, flick-ons. He'd be getting onto him every time. You know, as soon as he got back, he'd be tracking back and he'd be tackling. Then the ball would come up to me, he'd be running back past me again. He was unbelievable. He had a massive engine that he just seemed to want to run all day, and people couldn't compete with him. And that's why Manchester United bought him for big money, because they knew he was going to be a top player. But by the time I got to United, he was a slightly different player. I don't know whether the manager had spoke to him or whether certain injuries had slowed him down a little bit, but he was more of a controlling the ball in centre midfield and picking his times to go beyond. He still had a very good engine, but not like it was in the Forest days. But he was a more rounded, more complete player by the time I'd gone to United.
At Online Tradesmen, we've never been busier. And if you're a trade professional, there's never been a better time to join us. Access over €17 million worth of jobs nationwide every month, along with e-learning and other supports. Need a website for your business? It's included in your membership. And on average, Online Tradesmen members get up to 10 times their fee back in new sales, marketing tools and savings. Apply today at onlinetradesmen.ie. Online Tradesmen, the home of qualified trade professionals.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It's 7:58. You'll have heard Teddy Sheringham there talking to Nathan Murphy, one of the guests alongside Denise O'Sullivan and Sean Wright-Phillips at our exclusive Pepsi UEFA Champions League final preview show. Pepsi Max, maximum taste, no sugar, and the hashtag is for the love of it. To get tickets to our exclusive roadshow events, go on, download the OTB Sports app right now. That's the home of all of our best work here in OTB in the first place. You can get tickets to all of our events. Mark Lawrenson, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. You?
Yeah, good. The story is being written that Pep Guardiola got in his own head in the game at the weekend. Is it as simple as that? Was there more to it, or is that the be-all and end-all of what happened?
Well, I think it's a large part of it, because you know, without the holding midfield players and asking Gundogan to play in there, and Gundogan, you would argue, would probably be in City's top 3 of performers throughout the course of the season. I just think, you know, he's done this a little bit before, where sometimes I feel that he feels he is the cleverest person in the room, and you know, he doesn't make any mistakes. Look, I mean, Chelsea dealt with it extremely well. The problem for City really was that, you know, the two Chelsea fullbacks were outstanding, and the three centre-backs for Chelsea just stayed in position. And it was easy for them. I mean, it was like a cigar and armchair case. It was like, so when players came towards them, they were just like a solid wall all the time. It was only in the first maybe 10 minutes where I think Sterling almost got in a couple of times with Reece James. And that was the only time, really, they seriously looked like they might be capable of, well, creating chances, not just scoring.
So it's a knock-on impact, really, by making Gundogan be your defensive midfielder. He's then not herring forward the way he has been all season and creating those chances. And because, you know, we were having this conversation a little bit earlier on, and Owen's making the point that actually the players didn't really perform anyway. You know, if Fernandinho's there, it makes some difference, but it probably doesn't give Chelsea enough credit, and also then doesn't quite account for the fact that no one quite played up to their own standards for Manchester City.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you can't take away that argument whatsoever. But if you've got Fernandinho, you might not, and it's all mights and must-be's and maybes, they might not have conceded the goal. That would have been the important thing, because he would have been in a position where if you saw where the pass came through, that's his territory. And I think as well, I just they didn't play well. We know they didn't play well, but Gundogan's strength is getting forward and getting in the box. And especially, even more so, if you're playing without a recognised striker, false number 9, call it what you will, that's what he's really, really good at. And basically, you're taking away the strength of an outstanding player. Don't get me wrong, you know, he did okay, but why would you do that? Why would you suddenly decide, maybe, you know, the day before the game, you know what, I'm going to play him, and he probably thought, you know what, Chelsea would be really, really surprised. Well, they might have been surprised. But the problem was, City didn't really do anything then in the game to actually affect the fact that Gundogan was playing in there.
Is there a deeper reason to that, Mark, that say with Manchester City in possession of the ball, they didn't manage to be a little bit more fluid and get Gundogan into those sorts of positions? I can see obviously why the knock-on impact of playing him there could be detrimental to a team sitting in that holding midfield role. But in possession, I'm sure a bit more fluidity should be seen from a Pep Guardiola side to get him into those positions.
It should be, but I think this is where you've got to really commend Chelsea for the way that they played. I mean, they got really, really tight to play. The first 10 or 15 minutes and the game started really lively, and I'm kind of thinking, wow, this is going to be fab, almost end-to-end. But all Chelsea did, I mean, people talk about a low block, high block, call it what you will. They literally, when they lost the ball, they were in their own positions, but they got very, very tight to City. And it wasn't, on very few occasions did City actually manage to play for a ball from midfield that was forward and cut some of the Chelsea players out. Technically, Chelsea were outstanding. That's the best I think I've seen from them. I know they've beaten City a couple of times, but that really seriously was. I mean, the second half, City didn't really raise a gallop, in all honesty, did they? And then De Bruyne goes on, etc. I mean, they completely nullified him. And now I think it was just a fabulous performance from Chelsea, but it was a performance, obviously, which enabled them to negate anything that Manchester City did or came up with in the game.
How should a team play against a midfield which has N'Golo Kante in it?
Yeah. Get him injured. Yeah, it's difficult because he is, I think everybody realising that he is 1.5 players, and anything in that area, it's just his. I mean, he's got an unbelievable ability to get around the park, but also his positional sensing and play is outstanding. His passing has got even better, and it's. I mean, so just imagine if you were City and you're up against that. What if you go a little bit longer? Play a centre forward, change it, play a centre forward, and just go a bit longer and bypass the likes of Kante and the Chelsea midfield. Get up the pitch a little bit quicker. All right, sometimes by going longer you might give the ball away, but at least then you're starting to play in Chelsea's half. And obviously that's not in the managers. That's not in Guardiola's DNA, is it, to play that way? But sometimes, you know, it's an absolute needs must.
Well, they resorted to long throws at the end, Mark, so I'm sure that it's somewhere in their DNA deep down. Like, I mean, Is it just laid...
That's desperation, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, true. Does it just lay bare, then, this summer that Manchester City need that option, that it's not just a centre-forward who can fit into the classic Pep Guardiola style of play, that there needs to be an element of a target man to whoever they try and acquire in that position?
Yeah, because it's a point of weakness at the moment. We know they've got Jesus. Look, I just think as soon as you started asking me the question, I'm stood here saying Harry Kane. Now, you know, Harry Kane can do a job on two different levels. He can be that furthermost forward, obviously, and hold the ball up, or he can drop off for you as well. If you almost want to play without a centre forward, but just Harry Kane in that kind of, well, I just listened to Teddy Sheringham. Harry Kane in the Teddy Sheringham position. So, I mean, if you're Manchester City, and obviously, you know, everybody knows about the fabulous wealth, and you look at, right, well, you know, where are our problems? Well, it would appear, certainly against the top teams, that the problems are that if they play without a number 9, centre forward, call it whatever, that's when occasionally they will have the problems. And surely as a manager, you'd want cover for every single scenario. And if I was, you know, if I was Guardiola, I'd be thinking, let's just go and buy him. Let's go and buy him. You might even sell a couple of players and obviously offset the cost as well as for bringing him in. But just go and buy him. You know, give Tottenham the money that they want within reason, and it's done. And you know, then you're looking at him thinking, crikey. So you know, what would Chelsea have done against that if Harry Kane had been in there?
Probably playing N'Golo Kante in front of him, and N'Golo Kante is probably still man of the match. What's really interesting about what you say, Mark, is that does Saturday night actually affect the balance of power going into this summer's transfer market? Because if Chelsea need a player in one position, they would probably take Harry Kane.
I don't think he'd go. I don't think he'd go from Tottenham to Chelsea. That would be the first thing. I think that's a little bit of a no-no. I think you're asking for trouble. But because they just seriously hate each other as football clubs, and I'm not quite sure where that actually came from. But no, I don't think. I think if Manchester City or Chelsea are in for you, I think majority of players would go to Manchester City, unless like you're a centre back and you're looking at Manchester City and you're thinking, crikey, I might be fifth pick. Then that would obviously alter your opportunities for you. But no, I don't think it changes at all. I mean, you know, throughout the course of the season, City have been absolutely outstanding. It's just this last hurdle of the Champions League, which obviously is turning out to be a real problem for them.
What about Chelsea then? Because most of the commentary has been around the failure of Pep to bring what people would perceive to be the better team to victory. But it's an incredible achievement for Tuchel, and it really hints at the potential for this Chelsea team to be like incredible over the next couple of years and to go toe-to-toe with City, hopefully over a title race as well. Yeah.
I mean, they're an outstanding side. Do I think with what they've got they can win the league next year? No, I don't. I think you know, they create not lots of chances, but enough chances. And obviously at the moment one of the problems is converting them. Although of course Werner did that at the weekend, so they will buy a striker. It's obvious. I mean, they're pulling away with. I think Abraham's will probably be sold, and maybe one or two others on the fringe of that squad. And I think that they will go for, you know, the best striker that they can possibly get. The other thing as well is that obviously Tuchel's come in, done a fabulous job, so it was the right thing, obviously, to sack Frank Lampard, even if it's unlucky for him. But I would also say, in terms of Abramovich, I mean, I don't even know if he's been to any game this season apart from the one at the weekend. I don't even know if he's been to the away games in the Champions League. But it might just as well have got his kind of want to kind of, you know, get Chelsea up there to actually win the league. Might give him a little bit more hunger, saying, you know what, this fella really knows what he's doing. Let's go and get, well, as you say, they'll be in for Kane, but let's go and get the best striker available and maybe one or two others, and let's have a real go for it. Because, you know, these billionaires don't like coming second, do they? Third or fourth or whatever. I know they won the Champions League, but the holy grail is to win the Premier League, because it's the toughest competition, just purely and simply because of the fact of the 38 games. And as we know, in the Premier League, teams towards the bottom can beat teams towards the top, and it happens on a semi-regular basis.
I think you're right. It does feel like certainly the newspapers this morning are all suggesting that there's going to be a surge of cash available for Thomas Tuchel.
Okay.
He's triggered a new clause in his contract which gives him an extended amount of time and a pay rise. And look, you know, obviously we've been here before. There's no guarantees when it comes to Abramovich, but maybe he's finally found a manager who might have a couple of seasons.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, it's well documented with Abramovich. He actually did an interview a while ago, and he said the only person he shouldn't have sacked was Ancelotti. So, I mean, he's had an awful lot of managers, as we know. Look, I think it's one of them with him, isn't it? He looks at his team. As long as they're winning and they look like they're going to be successful, then obviously the manager's a favourite. As soon as they start losing games and there are one or two problems, Chelsea as a football club get very, very itchy, and they just get rid of the managers and they go and get somebody else. But you would have to think with what Tuchel's done, I mean, he can't really have done much better, can he, apart from maybe winning the FA Cup or something. So he very much has to strike while the iron's hot now and really seriously strengthen his team and make it outstanding and make it with a real serious chance of winning the league. And if he does so, he'll be fine.
We've obviously talked a good bit about how great Phil Foden is and how big a career he can have. If you were to compare the quality of the youngsters at Chelsea with the quality of the youngsters at Man City, Chelsea's youngsters are just as good, if not better.
Well, look, they've certainly come on, most definitely. But I know quite a bit about City because I know one of the guys there in the academy and stuff, and they've got a whole cast of players, young players, who are going to come through. And I don't think Chelsea are in quite that situation at the moment. And, you know, City have been doing this for a few years. The two Spanish guys, basically, which run the club, no expense spared. And you look at the number of players that they've got away on loan. But I think kids-wise and academy-wise, I think City are miles ahead. But, of course, you know, you don't know with these lads until you get them in the first team whether they are going to be superstars. I mean, Foden obviously is going to be because he's got massive ability, and we'll just wait and see. But I tell you what it does do when you look, and I know the season's finished and we're all like on our holidays or doing whatever. But now all of a sudden, when you look, you're thinking about August, you're thinking about the Premier League, and you're looking at the teams arguably being the top four. I tell you what, we can have the best chase and challenge for the Premier League than we've had for a long time in terms of teams actually got a real chance of winning it, rather than maybe you would say this at the start of the season, Liverpool and Man City. But we might have four, including Man United, which will be great.
Yeah, I think that was the other thing. Last thing is the quality of the actual match itself was a real testimony to both teams because they went for it, and so many of these finals have been nervy affairs. That wasn't the case on Saturday night.
No, well, I played in a couple, and they're horrible because you know straight away that it's the biggest club game in the world, and no matter where you are in the position you play in the team, you're very much, oh my God, please don't let me make a mistake that's going to cost us the European Cup because it's such a vaunted trophy. But yeah, no, they did. I was surprised. I mean, I'm actually in Mallorca, and I was watching it with all the locals and stuff. And you could tell with the locals that, you know, they loved the way that the game, especially when it started, you're thinking, wow, this is going to be a proper game, which is good. The only problem was, of course, there was only one goal, etc. But no, I think in just looking at the product was very, very good on Saturday night.
Mark, great stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Pleasure.
Mark Lawrenson, give us some thoughts on the Champions League final there. How many players did Chelsea need to be able to sustain the league title challenge next season on?
One.
Just one?
One. They need to sign an out-and-out goal scorer, and it's not going to be Harry Kane. Mark Lawrenson is banging the money there. They're not going to be able to prize him away from Tottenham, and he probably wouldn't go to Chelsea anyway. I think City would be in a much better position. Haaland would be the best option available if Kane's not available, but absolutely Romelu Lukaku and his reunion with Chelsea Football Club I think would be a more than decent option for Chelsea this summer. I think that this is not any reflection on the business they did last year. I think it would actually fit in perfectly with what Timo Werner can actually provide to the team, because I don't know, I thought the Werner and Havertz signings last summer were always going to be extremely exciting, and I think we're now at the realisation that Werner's never going to be a prolific goal scorer. I think he can be an excellent footballer for Chelsea and make those sorts of runs that he did for the goal at the weekend.
You'd like him to be able to stick it in from 2 yards. That'd be good.
It would be good, but hopefully you have somebody like Romelu Lukaku who will do that instead. And Timo Werner could be the sort of fella who's cutting in from the wing and actually providing, I don't know, defter finishes. It's wishful thinking for sure when it comes to his own goal tally, but I think they need one player. They need a poacher, they need a Romelu Lukaku, and then I think they can contend for the Premier League next season, no question.
So, Adama Traore, Declan Rice and Romelu Lukaku are the three that the Telegraph are linking with Tuchel and Chelsea. They're saying that Traore apparently will provide some competition for Reece James. Even though he didn't have a great season this year, they think that he still has enough credit in the bank. And also Declan Rice. I think, Declan Rice added into that team, they'd be pretty good.
Sensational. And in an injury crisis, you could almost drop Declan Rice back to a back three. And as you say, Billy Gilmour had such a brilliant season last year. He's going to come into the midfield fold more convincingly next season, you suspect, as well. The thing about Adama Traore is that he doesn't necessarily provide the same versatility that Reece James does.
No.
Reece James on the right of a back three, you would never play Adama Traore there. but as right wing back, right wing back against a good team, Adama Traore is not what you want. But in a dominant encounter where you've got a lot of the possession and maybe that's what you want as well. But it's hard to know if that's the right signing, to be honest, because that Wolves team were so good on the counter-attack, and how much counter-attacking football are Chelsea going to play next season, except for games against Manchester City maybe. I'm not sure. So I'm not entirely convinced on that Adama Traore signing, but God, Declan Rice would be an amazing piece of business.
Adama Traore could also be a great sub in the last 10-15 minutes of a game when, you are 2-0 up and the opposition is attacking, and all of a sudden he's stretching the defence. Right, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It's 16 minutes past 8 this morning. We're turning our attention to hurling. I'm delighted to say Aidan Fogarty is with us this morning. Good morning to you. How you doing?
Hi guys, how's it going?
Good. I want to stick up an old tweet here from one of your former colleagues, Owen Larkin, saying inter-county teams may as well give up the gym because the physicality has gone from hurling. Kilkenny versus Wexford today was nothing short of embarrassing. I'm ashamed to say this is the game of hurling. That's hardcore.
Yeah, that's a very damning comment on the match yesterday. Look, I think he has a point. Yeah, to be fair, I was at the game yesterday in Nolan Park, super day. But the physicality and the whole game itself, I think maybe one might be taken out of context. The game itself was a poor game, not by Kilkenny's behalf. Kilkenny played very well. They played to a really good structure and they looked very comfortable on the ball and playing to a kind of certain pattern. So it's more so Wexford. Wexford looked heavy-legged. They looked a bit, like they were training there for the last 2 weeks, running up sand dunes, which I wouldn't put past Davy Fitz at all. Looked a bit disinterested, and even Davy looked a bit disinterested, which you wouldn't be accustomed to with Wexford and Davy Fitz. So there's 2-10 to 7 points at half time there. So the game is pretty much over half time. So it's a very lethargic affair. But the physicality has definitely got out of it, Ger. And I think there's a couple of factors because of the physicality has gone out of it. Like, in my eyes, first of all, the puck-outs. The puck-outs are pretty much gone regarding 50-50 possession. So before you puck the ball long, with two guys winning possession, going hell for leather forward, 50-50 ball. That's gone out of the game. The second thing then, obviously, is the possession rate. It's all about possession retention, trying to keep the ball as best they can. So they're not going to give a 70-30 ball. They're not going to give a 60-40 ball. They're going to give the 80-20 ball for their advantage. And straight away, that's taking the physicality out as well. And the sharp hand passing, the man running off the shoulder, it's avoiding all the tackles. And the tackling these days is more kind of rucks and more kind of schmozzles, I suppose, is the term that the GAA folk kind of use. So the physicality is definitely gone. And then couple that then with the refereeing for the last couple of weeks. They're really harping on the arm tackle. The advantage now is not the advantage to play on. The advantage is the free. So them three factors alone is going to take physicality out of the game.
And is that something that you think is going to end up being specific to the league, or will the championship be refereed in the same way? What's your instinct about this?
Yeah, no, I think I think it's the league. I think it's trial and error. I think everybody came back at the beginning of the league, referees included, with a kind of unknown territory. Obviously, there's a lot of rule changes. The big change was the penalty, we thought. But actually, what's affecting the game mostly now is the advantage rule and the arm tackle that they're really harping on about. But I've seen it before, Jar. I've seen it with Kilkenny. I've seen it in the league that they bring in these rules, and it's kind of a reflection of the champions. And I don't mean that in regard to the kind of Limerick or whatever. Whoever's the champions, they seem to look at that, and it's kind of media orientated, that when you're up in the top level constantly, that you're going to be scrutinised. Teams are going to play, they're going to say to the media certain things, that Limerick play on the edge, they play with the arm tackle. Hegarty was, last year brought into the papers about fouling more so than scoring. And that has a knock-on effect. And I think Croke Park and the referees have looked at this and said, look, they're giving out about the tackle. They have to kind of seem to kind of referee it properly. So now, at the beginning of the league, they're really scrutinising all these hard tackles and these arm tackles. And Limerick don't like it because that's the way they play. But I think over the league and the way the process, I was at the game yesterday, Conor Lyons was reffing it. Actually, the advantage rule that he played wasn't the free. He gave the advantage to play on rather than giving the free. So already I think there's a bit of a change beginning to happen. And I think it's only early stages of the league, and it will fade out. Right,
so they've cottoned on to this then, that this has been a disaster for the first few weeks.
Yeah, it looks like it, yeah, because I even mentioned I was doing commentary on it there, and it was two or three clear chances. TJ Reid was actually in, turning his man and was heading for goal. There was two men back, so it wasn't a goal opportunity. But he played the advantage. I could see the arm going into the sky, playing the advantage rather than giving the free. So there was a change, whether it's just Conor Lyons himself doing it yesterday, or it has been said in Croke Park or the Referees Association. I don't know what goes on there. But there's definitely a change already in the game yesterday. And obviously the game yesterday was called off a week ago because of COVID cases. So they had time to think about it. So there was a change. So I think it's going to, I think it'll phase out. I think it was just a trial and error for the league. And that's what the league is about, really.
Sorry, go on.
The league can also be a brilliant opportunity for teams to set some sort of marker down, even not against opponents, but for themselves for the summer ahead. And I just want to go back to what you said there about Wexford looking disinterested. That must be a huge concern for any Wexford hurling fans. And Brendan Cummins picks up on it as well in his column in The Independent this morning. He says what worried me about their showing yesterday was how similar they looked to the game against Clare and Portlaoise last November. They didn't have the energy they needed to play the game. He's obviously picked up on the exact same thing that you're saying there. Surely if there was one team who needed to show up and look interested in this year's league, it was Wexford, to finally prove that 2019 wasn't a flash in the pan.
I think you're spot on. I think you hit the nail on the head. Especially, you can't just turn a switch and say in 4 weeks' time we're going to come up and play Kilkenny again, albeit if they beat Laois or play Kilkenny in the semi-final. But you can't just flick a switch, and it's so condensed. The league is so condensed. There's only 2 more games left, and then you're into championship. So that's literally a 3 or 4 week span, and you're into championship level. So coming up being disinterested is not the thing to do for me. I think is it mind games by Davy Fitz? You know, we've seen it before in the past, that the things that he plays on. I'm not too sure, but as I said, it doesn't bode well for Wexford. Now, in fairness to Davy, he did try out a lot of new guys. He did start, the likes of Glenn Malone was playing, Mikey Dwyer got a shout in, and he did finish with a stronger team. So we kind of mentioned it yesterday that a lot of new guys didn't play to their kind of to their structure and to their ability, and they finished up with maybe Jack O'Connor coming on, Sean Murphy, Conor McDonald. These guys came on as well, and they finished a lot stronger team. But the energy wasn't there, and Wexford is all about energy and moving through the lines and getting that ball up to the field to the best shooter in the best position, and that just did not happen yesterday. They're actually hitting long balls to the square to finish up, leaving Lee Chin and McDonald in there, and that wasn't the way Wexford were playing. And even afterwards, the guys just kind of went to a huddle in the middle of the field, and it all just looked very lethargic. But you would be worried about it because guys now have to start building momentum. The league is the league, but I kind of think we took it for advantage to say that, yeah, it's not important, but it is important now because they've only two more games to the championship.
Yeah, they've 2 more games, 2 more winnable games as well, and then their first championship match is going to be against Laois, who they've already hammered in the league, and you'd expect them to win that game, and then it's Kilkenny again. Is that the element of mind games here? Is that Davies like, yeah, look, you can win this one, we'll take it handy this week, but it'll be all guns blazing the first weekend in July when we actually meet for real.
Yeah, possibly, Jared, but I don't believe you can tell your players to go out and take it handy. I just don't believe that. And even as a player, you put out a team, the only thing you can kind of play down a game in my kind of experience is that you don't have meetings maybe during the week about the team. You don't really talk about the game coming up. You name a team and you kind of let it go. And that to me kind of suggests that, right, there's that much importance in it. You know, I've seen with Brian over the years, the bigger the game, the more involved he is, the more kind of chatting he's doing to players and everything like that. But as a player, if you're picked on a team to play against, especially Kilkenny or the topper teams, and teams are going to meet in the championship, you want to set out your stall. You want to play well. You want to make the team, first of all.
Yeah.
So I just don't believe players go out and say, look, it's only a league game. It's not important. And you talk about setting down markers. Maybe to Kilkenny, because in fairness, Kilkenny have struggled against Wexford. I don't think they've beaten them since 2018. They were setting down a marker yesterday. It didn't seem that way at all.
TJ Reid's pretty good at hurling, isn't he?
It's just phenomenal. Like, and I hate to say it, I've actually seen him play better. You know, it's just every ball he got, he done damage. Now, he did score, I think it was 15 frees. He scored 2 5s and 14 frees or something like that. And he is a huge asset. He wasn't playing there the second league game. And Kilkenny still won, but it was just, the things he done was just phenomenal. But in saying that, we're trying to avoid TJ being the main man for Kilkenny. And yesterday, it did look that way because a lot of scores came without his involvement. As I said, I've seen TJ play better. He scored 118 yesterday. It's hard to believe. It's hard to even fathom. And you wouldn't even notice him scoring it. Like, that's how good he's got. But the team itself did play better when he wasn't involved, and that's what I'd be happy to see.
Okay, what about the rest of the team? Because the truth about where Kilkenny are is very hard. Over the last couple of years, they've had amazing games. They've had amazing halves of games. They've had amazing quarters in games, and they've also had disastrous quarters and disastrous halves that have ultimately cost them All-Ireland. So where are they in your mind at the moment in terms of evolving into a team that can live with Limerick, because they're the standard bearer, and also new talent coming through? So first off, maybe where are they, and then we can do the new talent afterwards.
Yeah, it's hard to know, I suppose. I'm not avoiding the question, but it's like, you know, they played Antrim, they played Dublin, and they played a lethargic Wexford. Now, look, they can only play what's in front of them, but they won and they're playing well. But in my eyes, I think they're going very well. I think they're playing to a system now that they seem comfortable on. They seem more comfortable on the ball, which we would have said before that they didn't. You know, a lot of players are kind of just wants to hit it, and that has been the Kilkenny way. Just kind of hit it long and win your own ball in 50-50. But now they're playing it through the lines, and they're not overdoing it. I think some teams are overdoing it in the league, but they're playing maybe 1 or 2 or 3 possessions out of trouble, and then they're looking up and they're hitting it into space. Kind of what Limerick are doing, to be fair. The 2 corner forwards yesterday were running to the corners and they're playing it into that space. Now, they had a lot of time to do that, but, you know, in fairness, they were hitting the square as well with TJ Reid as well. So I think they're playing to a great system that they're more comfortable and that they actually believe in now. You know, you could see before the last couple of years when they came under pressure, they kind of turned the system out of it and went back to what they were always doing and hitting it long. But they seem to be kind of playing a lot better now and enjoying it more and be more comfortable on the ball. So from that aspect, I'd be very happy. As well as that, they seem to be kind of nailed down a few places. Hugh Lauder was full back. Pádraig Welsh seems to be a centre back now. John Donnelly's in kind of the centre forward line, and then TJ Reid between himself are kind of switching in and out. Positions don't really matter, but I still think there needs to be kind of that structure on the team, and they're getting there. And we talked about people coming through. The strength of the panel seems to be getting better. You know, Conor Fogarty was on the bench yesterday, made an appearance. James Maher was back on the bench. Richie Hogan and Walter Welsh were injured, so they have to come back onto the bench. And then you had the likes of maybe Corcoran there, nailing down the position there, wing back, and James Berrigan there from Connie. He got taken off yesterday, but still he made a few decent impacts on the game. So, look, I'd be happier than other years to where Kilkenny are at, to be fair.
Yeah, 2 unbeaten teams in the National League so far this year. So we're looking at a Kilkenny Cork All-Ireland final, I presume.
Yeah, Kilkenny Cork All-Ireland final and League final. I think that's the way it is. But look, I think that's another incentive in the league. There's no real winner of the league. You just top your group, and if you play each other in championship, there's kind of a league final behind it. So that's why the league is what it is, I suppose, is the term for that.
At the same time, 7:15 this Saturday evening, Limerick against Cork is a tantalising prospect, Aidan. Kilkenny play Laois this weekend, by the way. Like this Limerick side, people have spoken up the idea of Galway being the team to take them out potentially this summer, and we've seen it a couple of weeks ago in the league. I'm sure there's a quiet confidence within Cork how they've started this year that they also have the tools to give Limerick serious problems.
Yeah, I think so. Limerick, it's hard to know with Limerick. Limerick need to start winning games now. They were learning champions, and I think it's been a small bit of a learning curve for Limerick. They're at the top there basically for the last 3 years, and when you're at the top, people love the underdog, and people are scrutinising Limerick. The pressure is coming on, I think, a small bit just from the media. You see John Kiley not happy with the way Galway kind of came out and played against them, and then retracted his statement. Small things like that, I think they're just a little bit distracted. I think they need to kind of come together and just kind of throw off all the outside influences, because they are the top team. And every team, I've seen it before with Kilkenny, every team that's going out to play you, whether it be a Walsh Cup game, a league game, a championship game, they are going all hell for leather to beat you, because they are putting themselves, if we beat Limerick, we're in a good place. And then coupled with that is the aura. Try and stop this aura. Kilkenny got it with the 4-in-a-row team, that this aura of Kilkenny coming out and putting teams away. If you're losing games, even in the league, if you're not winning, that aura tends to go, and that invincibility tends to go. And that's what Limerick need to build up now. But I wouldn't be worried about them, but I think it's more the outside influences, and it's getting into their head, and players are getting into their head, and players are obviously niggling them off the ball and upsetting their hurling. So they need to concentrate on the game now rather than what's going on outside it. Yes, they are champions, and it's more a sign of respect from the other teams and the other players if they're doing that, because they rate you highly and they believe they need to do that to kind of beat you. So it's a sign of respect. So play the ball, I think, play what's in front of you. Do not react to what's happening on the field. The Cork game is going to be a huge one, I think, because we said it before on this show that Cork and Galway are probably the two teams at the minute who can take down Limerick, and the Cork are flying it. They're getting goals. I think they have 7 goals against Westmeath. They could have the 5 goals against Watford and 2 goals against Tip. So they're getting goals. Personally, I don't like their style of play. I think they're too kind of passing through the lines, very close to each other. And you've seen again Tipperary, they got caught in possession. Tipperary just held back on the 40, let them come at them to a stage and then hit them, and they got overturned an awful lot. But I think it's a massive game, more so for Limerick this weekend. But Cork are definitely a team that can beat them and are playing well. And we haven't seen Cork playing well. They won the last league in 1998. They haven't done well in league over the year. But this league is different. The ground is a little bit a little bit harder. The weather has been poor, but it's more like summer hurling, and that's why they're doing well.
They play on the 3rd of July as well in Thurles in the semi-final of the Munster Hurling Championship. So what do you do this weekend? Is there anybody saying, like, if you're in the Cork camp, are you having those meetings that you talked about that Cody was having, or those calls that Cody was having in those big weeks to say, this is it? Because we've just seen Chelsea win twice in a row, and then the 3rd time in a row, they were clearly in Manchester City's heads. So if you're Cork, you're trying to get in Limerick's heads by winning this game, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. You're trying to put doubts in their minds. I think from Cork's point of view, I think keep winning, keep that momentum going. They are flying at the top of the league. They have 6 points, so they are going really well. But I think go for Limerick. I think it's more of a kind of a team scenario, management scenario, as I mentioned before. For championship, it totally changed for championship. Team meetings change, players change, the scrutiny changes on who you're marking, everything. But I think as a team, you definitely want to get into Limerick's head. You want to keep them down. You want to keep them kind of thinking that this is not going to be easy, which it's not. And I think they have to go hell for leather this weekend forward. But on the flip side, this game is more important for Limerick because they have to win a game in the league yet. So they need to start winning.
Yeah, all of a sudden that game seems much bigger than it did a couple of weeks ago. Aidan, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Aidan Taggy Fogarty giving us some thoughts there this morning on the hurling championship. What would you do, Owen? Do you go all guts this weekend?
Yeah, I think Limerick need that at this point. I think that, as we mentioned with the football earlier on, there's just no sense in keeping something close to your chest at this point. Like,
and what about if you're Cork though?
Same thing. There's no sense in playing it coy. I don't think Cork are good at being coy about anything. Like, I mean, lean into Corkness, lean into the chest bursting out of your jersey sort of nature that is so deeply ingrained in Cork. Cork aren't good at being defeatist, at kind of being cute hooers or playing down their chances. Cork need that arrogance. They need to be winning, and they need to be beating teams like Limerick if they want to be beating teams like Limerick in the championship. I can't wait for this weekend. I think the more we get into this hurling league, hopefully the better things we'll get. Hopefully I'm not sure, are the referees are to blame completely for what we've seen over the last few weeks, but maybe they suddenly get better because the play gets better and a little bit cleaner as well over the next few weeks.
I do think the Chelsea example is a good one. You keep beating a team, you're going to keep beating a team.
100%. I think that it's proved that there's this whole idea of keeping your powder dry is actually kind of nonsense, really. Yes, there will be tactical tweaks here and there, but what is a far more important factor in beating a team is whether or not your man has the beating of his opposite man. Yes, the tactics will come into play, and yes, there will be certain elements that might be held back for a rainy day, so to speak. But really, you've got to be hitting the ground running over the course of the next few weeks. And for Limerick, it's kind of like now is when they need to start playing, and they will be fine this summer if they start performing now. But you have to be a little bit concerned about where they're going. But by the way, that Saturday, 3rd of July that you mentioned there, I tweeted this out at the weekend, but I was just looking through it. That is the day of sport this summer. You've obviously got that game, Cork versus Limerick. You've got the 2 semi-finals in the Leinster Hurling Championship that weekend, which will both be crackers. You've got 2 European Championship quarter-finals. You've got the Irish Open that weekend. You've got Monaghan versus Fermanagh. And you've got Ireland against Japan in the rugby. And there is a Lions warm-up match against the South African Lions club that morning as well, or that evening as well. So it is quite a day of sport for anybody who's interested in sport, which they tend to be while listening to this show. Right,
8:36 this morning. There are better times ahead, is the long and short of that. Anthony Moyles is going to join us after 9 o'clock to talk about the fallout from the weekend's Gaelic football. Right now, then, we're going to hear from our 2 analysts over the weekend. Andy Moran was in Castlebar at Mayo Meath, but first, Michael Meehan was in Tuam at Galway against Dublin with Aisling O'Reilly. Here's Michael on whether Galway are too reliant on Shane Walsh.
Well, there was only 2 of those from play, I think, Aisling. So there were frees, and the frees were won by loads of different lads. So I wouldn't be overly worried about that. You'd love to see even more from Shane from play. He's that kind of player. Just to get him involved, get him more touches on the ball, get 10 more touches in each half, and he doesn't have to solo 60 yards every time. It's just a give and go, and how he attracts defenders is going to create space for the other Galway forwards as well. So I think there's more in that they can that he can be utilised a little bit more to the overall benefit of the team. And Peter Cook kicked a point from play just before he was taken off. He had a very good game. So they have scores. The last day out, Rob Finnerty got 5 from play. I think he only had 1 today. Obviously, Michael Fitzsimons was keeping tabs on them pretty well. So they have scores. I wouldn't be very worried in that regard. The one cause for concern is Damien Comer and his hand injury that he picked up in the last game. So we'll have to see how serious that is. But it's probably going to rule him out of the relegation playoff. But you'll be hoping from a Galway perspective that he's available come the first round of the kind of championship.
Yeah, I just spoke to Porrick Joyce there, and that's what he said. He thinks he'll be out till championship. Hopefully all going well, he'll be back then. Geez, Damien doesn't have any luck. It's his 3rd season now, I think, with Galway that he's had these injuries.
Yeah, it's a pity. But I suppose the only benefit of having a hand injury, he can still do all the running, he can still do all the kicking that he wants. It's obviously his handling skills, but if it was a recurrence of a hamstring or something like that, it will be a lot more concern for the medical team and for Damien. So I think it's the least worst injury he could have got, maybe, just to give him a chance to be on the pitch come the game with Roscommon. And he's a vital cog in this Galway team. If they are to build an attack on championship, he's going to be at the heart of it.
And you've played alongside Porrick Joyce. Do you think he'd be happy here today? He seemed happy when I spoke to him. When he's looking to championship, that's his aim.
Yeah, exactly. He'd certainly take a lot of, there was a lot of positives out of it. But knowing Porrick, he'd actually be disappointed that they didn't win. It's as simple as that. He has very high standards, and albeit against the best team around for God knows how long, but he would still want to be trying to, get one over them. And they really gave it their best effort. As I said, I think how well set up they were in the first half will be one of the main things. How well they coped with the pressure of Dublin. They got picked open a couple of times in the second half, but if he can build on that. And in another area, I thought they were very good in the first half. What was kickouts, and it dropped in the second half for a while, but they regained that again. And it's a couple of I saw there was a set piece kickout or two as well that led to long ball over the top to Liam Silk, who released Shane for a point at a critical stage. So it's nice to see little things like that being tried and coming off as well. Then is a real added bonus.
Absolutely, and they're a young team. You mentioned up in the press box about Matthew Tierney. He's still under 20.
Yeah, Matthew, and he got the goal that kind of brought it back to a 2-point game. He put in a big shift. He was around the middle of the field in the first half. He was contesting kickouts. He was tracking back. He was near hand tackle. The stuff you want to see, the stuff you're trying to coach the kids to do. And Jack Lynn was the other under 20 who came through. Now he went off with what looked like a shoulder injury. So we'd be hoping that it's not too serious for him. It's his first season, and he started every game. He had David Clifford the first day out for a while. He had Cormac Costello today, so he's had a tough time of it, but he's well able to mind himself on the pitch. So hopefully that injury won't set him back too far.
And looking ahead now to the relegation battle, they have Monaghan in that, and it's a home game for Monaghan. How do you think they'll fare out there?
Yeah, it's obviously home advantage is a great benefit to have in this. But it's a game, and I saw Monaghan last weekend, and some of their attacking play was exceptional. So they're much like Galway. There's a lot of change in their team and panel. They're bringing in a lot of players that seem to be coping quite well. So and in the last few years, Monaghan and Galway have had very close battles on and off in Championship and in League. It was a 1-point win for Galway last year over them at the death in Pearse Stadium. So I think it'll be a very tight game, but it's a great game to get to for both teams now. Will be obviously they want to secure their league position in Division 1 for next year, and it's a perfect game, in the run into Championship. Like you're normally you'd be looking for a challenge match, 2-3 weeks out from a Championship match, and this is a league game with a lot riding in it. So it's a massive game for both teams. I think obviously Galway will be going to win it, and go in with that bit of confidence. Having won your last league game is far better from a player's perspective and a management's perspective to be going in with that in the back of your head as opposed to a loss. So they'll be going all guns blazing for that, and I think it'll be a very good game.
Brilliant, and obviously no supporters here today. I know the Galway supporters would love to be here to get behind the lads. They'll be back soon, no doubt.
They will, yeah. There was a few people looking in from behind the goal there. I don't know if we can see behind me, but it's going in the right direction, and hopefully that can keep. We'll keep going in the right way. That we'll get to see crowds, whatever amount of people at matches. But I think. Even the return of the matches has done so much for people following and watching, and it's just the next logical step. And I'd say there could be 500 at a game, but I say it'll sound like 5,000 once they're actually let in. It'll mean so much to them, and the players are going to feed off that as well. So it's all in all, it's really positive.
Brilliant, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.
Mayo now face Clare in a semi-final to get back to Division 1. How essential is it for James Horan to get back there?
Yeah, I think it's he knows it. It's massive. There's James likes winning. He likes being competitive. He wants to be in Division 1. He would definitely see himself as a Division 1 manager, and that's where he wants to be, and that kind of rubs off on the team too. It gives him that confidence. I think Mayo will. I think they will go and take on Clare. I think they'll do quite well judging on that performance. But the difference is, if we take Kyogan, not to overemphasise it, he's a Division 1 footballer, and when he hits you, you know you've been hit. You know that contact is like once he hits you, you're thinking, where can I give away the ball? When Aidan O'Shea comes on there and he tackles Kyogan, you can see Kyogan giving him a bit back, but then Aidan goes and turns the next man. That's Division 1 football, and it's little things like that. Maybe us too slow on the ball at times when we're taking our shots. I found it when I was retiring. All of a sudden, I started getting blocked down. Where you're getting that bit slower and you're moving at that bit slower of a pace, you start doing stuff that never happened to you in your career. And Division 2 is quite similar to that. Fellas getting blocked, fellas losing the ball in possession. You've seen fellas there today, Tommy, you've seen them go for a second grab at the ball. if you're marking Mick Fitzsimons, you're marking Johnny Cooper, and if you need to grab the ball twice, you're losing the ball has gone up the field. So it's just little things like that. What you get away with it on days like today, you mightn't get away with them in 3-4 weeks time.
So after Clare, there's a couple of weeks then till the Connacht Championship. What are the next couple of weeks going to be like in the Mayo camp?
I'd say they're buzzing. There's nothing like winning games. We mentioned Galway last week or 2 weeks ago on the pod. They hadn't won a game since last March, and now all of a sudden they win a game. Can you imagine Galway's training this week compared to what happened to them against Kerry the week before? It just lifts the whole thing. And Mayo are the same. 3 victories on the bounce. Yes, we're saying it's Division 2. You have to emphasise that it is Division 2 and you don't know, but 3 victories on the bounce gives you a huge boost. You've got your leader back in on the team with Aidan O'Shea coming back in, kind of filling that void. You've Colin Boyle coming back. You have the young fellas coming on, doing very well. Darren McHale again today, really good. Jack Carney around the middle, held his own. I think it's really exciting.
Has anyone put their hand up for you that they're saying to James Horan, let me start in that first championship match?
I think the forwards is the most key decision. I think you're going to have Killian, you're going to have Tommy, you're going to have Aidan O'Shea, Jeremy or whoever fits in there. So Ryan O'Donoghue is definitely going to start. Sorry, they're the 4. Tommy, Ryan, Aidan and Killian, they're going to start. So there's the other 2. And for me, Ballintover's Brian Walsh really stood out today. I think he got a tough time with Jack O'Connor, like really tough time. That boy can move, but he just stuck at it, nice and steady, won the penalty, kicked a couple of frees, couple of assists, or won a couple of frees, couple of assists, kicked a couple of points. You can't ask for any more. And he didn't panic during the game, didn't lose a ball, struggled a bit with O'Connor's pace, but didn't lose a ball right through. And I think he's the one that may say, right, okay, I'm ready to go. Owen O'Donoghue in the corner, thought did really well. He's a guy that the people in Mayo really kind of fancy in terms of playing corner back. Had an outstanding season a couple of seasons back. I think he did okay. Probably wasn't tested enough to really show it, but he absolutely did nothing wrong. And then Stephen Cohen, who captained the team in the middle, in centre half back, hasn't played the first 2 league games. I don't know if that's because of injury or where it is, but I thought really stuck the whole thing together today and done really well.
Brilliant, Andy. Thanks, Meehan. I'll see you on Wednesday. We'll be back with Paddy Andrews on the Football Pod.
Super.
Right. That was good stuff there from the 2 lads. You can hear those available on the OTB Podcast Network if you want to get the full versions of them. And of course, over the course of the GAA summer, we're going to be bringing you loads of those stuff a little bit earlier than we might previously have as well. Stay tuned for more details on that. And of course, you can hear more from Andy on the Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, which will be released on Wednesday afternoon. It is 8:47 here this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It's time for us to turn our attention to rugby. Alan Quinlan is with us. Alan, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Good, lads. Yeah. And yourselves?
Is this a big day for you?
Why is that?
I don't know. It's just you're a man of a certain age. You're in the right cohort for some.
Oh yes, yeah. I'm going today. Yeah, I'm getting the injection today. Yeah, sorry. I was thinking there, what's on the sporting agenda that I've missed today? No, vaccination day. Yeah, for sure.
Is this the most excited you've been ever going to Lansdowne Road?
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait. This is a really special day, Ger. Can't wait. It'll be like my first cap.
Well, I was going to say, Jesus, of all the places. It has meaning for you. Right, look, let's move on because the Lions, you picture, this is our depth chart, you picture forwards for us, and I don't know, did you get much by way of criticism? All of these Lions selections seem to annoy somebody somewhere along the way, but with the backs, I don't know, is there a huge amount of debate? Maybe there is. Let's start with the halfbacks. What have you gone for?
Yeah, I think the biggest debate will be whether Owen Farrell. Well, there's 3 options here. He starts. He doesn't start. He starts at 10. Starts in the team. Starts at 10, or starts in the centre, or doesn't start at all. That's 4 options. I think he's a fantastic player. I love his resilience and leadership and physicality. I think sometimes he's been criticised for that, but he's a real leader. I think he's a great player. Obviously, you can look at all the English players, Jared, throughout the Six Nations and think they've got a dip in form. There was various different reasons for that. I think the biggest one was the Saracens break and those guys not playing rugby for a long time. And the other teams getting better in the Six Nations, having a real crack off England. But I would have Owen Farrell as my 10, as my starting 10, given his ability and his mental strength, and I have Conor Murray inside him. I think they're my starting 9 and 10 for. This is all, it's subjective, and as you said at the start, loads of people will have different opinions and want different players in for different reasons. And of course, it's the same with the forwards. You could mix things around and still have a very, very strong side. But just based on a bit of a hunch and what they've done before, I think Murray and Owen Farrell are the 9 and 10. And
was anybody close to knocking either of those two players out of your team?
Well, yeah, I think Dan Biggar has played really well for Wales, and he's a brilliant player. Finn Russell obviously is that maverick who can do something special. But I just think when you play the Springboks, it's about control and it's about playing in the right areas. And certainly you'll get a team who will be very direct and pragmatic themselves. It's not that I want to see the Lions kick the leather off the ball, but I think Farrell is a very good distributor as well. But at halfback, then you've got Ali Price and Gareth Davies, who Gareth Davies, was on and off the Welsh team during the Six Nations. Incredible talent, very dangerous around the breakdown. He's a running scrum half as well. And Ali Price had a very good Six Nations for Scotland. I just think the way Conor Murray has probably fought his way back to find form and what he's done before, and his physicality will probably get him the nod for that first set. Again, loads of stuff can happen here in the warm-up games, but I just think at the moment, I think they're the ones that I'd select. Again, you can change this up. I think Conor Murray is more locked in than Owen Farrell at 10 at the moment, because I think there's an option of playing Farrell at 12 as well, so that's a real option, or playing Biggar or Finn Russell at 10. So there's loads of different options there, but they're the two I'd go for at the start.
Okay, so let's talk about the 12 position then. So the centres, you've got Robbie Henshaw and Elliot Daly, is that right?
Yeah, Chris Harris, who's played well for Scotland. A little bit, few eyebrows raised when he got selected. Very, very good player. And Bundy Aki, of course, there was eyebrows raised because he hadn't played in a long time and wasn't starting for Ireland, the Six Nations. So, again, you could argue that this isn't a form selection with Elliot Daly at 13. He plays full-back wing. He's very versatile. I just think the pace he gives you as an outside centre offers you a real attacking threat. He's a brilliant footballer. He's physical as well. And he's been on the Lions tour before. He was superb in New Zealand 4 years ago. So Robbie Henshaw, 12, I think he's the form 12 throughout the whole Six Nations, and even with Leinster, he's been brilliant. So he's for the last 6 months, he's been fantastic. Again, you can move things around here, and you can put Robbie Henshaw to 13 and Bundy Aki to 12.
Well, I was going to ask, if Owen Farrell goes to 12, is that really bad news for Robbie Henshaw, or does Robbie Henshaw?
No, Robbie Henshaw goes to 13. I think right. He's starting at the moment, Robbie Henshaw, definitely. And if Farrell goes to 12, Henshaw goes to 13. So again, you can move players around here. Bundy Aki is someone who, it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up having been brilliant in those warm-up games and the lead out in games into that first test. He's someone who could really grab the attention, and he has that ability to do that. So I wouldn't rule any of them out. Chris Harris as well. So I think that's what I'd go with now. Picking a team now: Robbie Henshaw, Elliot Daly.
It did seem like he brought Bundy Aki to play in the tests. Like, you're either bringing this guy, there's a very specific game plan which involves bringing Bundy Aki on the tour.
I think but Bundy Aki has to show him some form. I think and that's my point. Bundy Aki is an incredibly talented player who can do brilliant things. He's quick. He's very aggressive going forward, and he gives you that real kind of pivotal point if you want him to make hard carries in yards. And he's a good distributor as well. I think he's brought him because he believes he can do that. Whether he'll start him in the first test is solely down to Bundy Aki and how he plays in the lead-up games to it. So absolutely could happen. But why has he brought Elliot Daly as a centre? I don't think, when they were picking these players, I don't think he went, well, he'll fill a gap for us. I think all four could start. But the one that's Tuolangi is the one that's a massive loss to this side, particularly his power and strength and pace that he has. He's back playing. He's come back from his Achilles injury, played at the weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody goes down injured that Gatland will haul him into the Lions squad if it happens in the next while. But historically, 4 or 5 guys miss out from original selection. I know that myself. Mine was different, the suspension, but there's always a number of injuries. So you could see a lot of change and strangely enough, over the years when I watched Lions tours, guys who were originally not picked on a Lions tour end up starting the first test. So, it's all subjective, isn't it? And it depends on what happens in the next while. But for now, I'd go with Robbie Henshaw and Elliot Daly.
Obviously, we can't predict form and fitness at any point, but a couple of years ago, you would have almost said that trying to plan for a tour to South Africa without Tuilagi and Billy Vunipola would have been a near unthinkable task.
Yeah, it's just, and I was surprised. I thought he would take a punt on Billy Vunipola this time, but Faletau played so well in the Six Nations for Wales, and I was a little bit surprised that he didn't go with Vunipola. But look, the danger is you try and fight fire with that physicality and power. I think the key for the Lions this year will be hold on to the ball and try and disrupt their ball. It's always very dangerous to take them on like for like physically, and you end up playing a kind of a blunt, cancelling each other out type of game of rugby. So I think the Lions are better than that, and I think they will try and play a little bit differently to that. But as you say, if you had those 2 guys available, fit and healthy, they'd be probably some of your first names on a selection sheet.
Okay, who have you gone for the back 3?
Stuart Hogg at 15, Rhys Zammit at 14, and Doohan van der Merwe on the other wing, which will probably that'll raise a few eyebrows. I think I've left Liam Williams and Anthony Watson out, and Josh Adams. I think again Anthony Watson could start as your right winger there. He's a superb player, and Liam Williams, an all-round footballer. He could easily start at full-back ahead of Stuart Hogg. But I just think the way Stuart Hogg has played this year, he's matured, he's added to his game. Probably a couple of years ago, he was in the bracket of Finn Russell, where he's this incredible talent, but sometimes the basic fundamentals aren't done to high standard, i.e. the catch and the kicking game. And I think he's added to that. I think he's matured a lot. His decision-making is good, and his attacking threat is superb. So I think he deserves to go down the team sheet now, and I'd love to see him start in the tests, because I think, he would have been disappointed a number of years ago. He got injured in New Zealand.
Yeah, he ran into one
and
of
I think
his
he
teammates and
deserves,
broke his face.
Conor Murray, Conor Murray broke his jaw, and I think I'd love to see him kind of star, and he could be a star on this tour. For me, Louis Rhys Zammit is just, obviously he's quite inexperienced, but I just think the way he played in the Six Nations was just a joy to watch. I think he's such a natural runner, great footballer. He's young, and that may cause an issue or two for Warren Gatland and his selectors if that little bit of experience, given that who I'm picking now is leaving out Watson and Liam Williams, and even Josh Adams, who's a very physical, confrontational type of player as well. But I think he's brought Van der Merwe for a reason, and I think he's big, he's quick, he's very, very physical, and he's hard to stop. So that's who I go with at the moment. People will probably say it's crazy to leave Anthony Watson and Liam Williams out of the side.
Okay, so we've got Conor Murray at 9, Owen Farrell at 10, it's Robbie Henshaw at 12 and Elliot Daly at 13, and the back 3 are Doohan van der Merwe, Louis Zammit and Stuart Hogg. So who's next up? What's the makeup of your bench? What do you think it'll be?
The makeup of the bench, I think it's bigger. At fly half, Gareth Davies. There you're back to. Liam Williams is probably the one that goes onto the bench then, because of his versatility, being able to play. He could even play at centre. He's wing full back as well. So Liam Williams, Dan Bigger, and who did I say? Gareth Davies, scrum half, yeah.
So you're a 5-3 split. I mean, around the time of the World Cup when South Africa were sometimes the 6-2 split, because they were like, look, we're just going to kill everybody here physically. This is going to be our World Cup. We're going to play on our terms. Some teams got sucked into that and tried to, as you say, fight fire with fire. You don't think that's the right thing to do?
No, I don't. I don't, unless you have back rows who can go out and play in the back line. The one I think about all the time who's such a brilliant footballer is Tipperick for Wales. You could put him in the centre or on the wing and he wouldn't look out of place. But I just think sometimes it's too much of a risk. I think if you get a couple of injuries to your second rows, back rowers, which can happen, bring your hooker in, put him in the back row, adopt that way, and do it that way. But I'm not a huge fan of the 6-2 split. I think it sends out a message of it being a forward oriented game. It worked for South Africa incredibly well.
But that was their identity. That was who they were.
And if you look, I said this on Friday, if you look at the European final, the Champions Cup final, both Toulouse and La Rochelle went for 6-2 splits. Sometimes it can be dictated by not having enough depth in the backs and having a number of injuries and saying, look, well, our hand is forced here a little bit and let's go for the extra forward.
In terms of what you think the Lions should look like, we've seen enough from Warren Gatland from his time at Wales and now his time with the Lions to have a fair idea that the team are going to play a Warren Gatland style of rugby, right?
I don't know. I think Townsend being in there he'll certainly try and influence the style, of course, as will all the coaches, but not necessarily. But I think the key here, Ger, is you play the warm-up games. You won't be showing your hand as much. It'll be down to a little bit of play, which you see. Obviously, they'll have a structure about, first, second, third phase and where they want to, kicking strategies and things like that. They'll definitely hold back a little bit till that first test. But, his type of game plan is very effective. But the challenge is holding on to the ball and matching those big collisions that are going to happen. I think they'll try and play with pace and tempo throughout the whole tour and let South Africa assess and try and match that and try and deal with that. There's enough of quality and enough of threats in that line's makeup to be able to play it a number of different ways. But I think they're going to be brave and try and move the ball as well.
That's where they've had success over the years.
Well, I think that's what they have to do, Ger. I think, because I don't agree with the fact of, I remember Ireland going to South Africa a number of years ago and I was there, wow, this is unbelievable, because they were just playing with tempo, pace, holding on to the ball, moving the ball, and they won that first test in Cape Town when CJ Stander got sent off. And I just thought their approach was brilliant. Now, their accuracy and the speed of breakdown and the clean-outs and all that were superb against a big, strong physical side. And it was a South Africa that were, in transition and turning a corner and trying to turn a corner. They were in a bit of turmoil under Alistair Coetzee at the time. They're obviously on a high now. The concern for them would be, and I heard Razzie speaking about it during the week, that, the only consolation for them is their top players are playing across Europe, Japan, France, and that they've matches under their belt. So they've got to get up and running fairly quickly and put a plan and a strategy together and try and reach the heights that they did in Japan.
All right. When you're thinking about this at the moment, do you make South Africa strong favourites? Is it a 50-50 thing in your head? What do you think?
It's a 50-50, I think, because we don't know what South Africa are going to be like. We don't know what kind of level they're going to be at. I think their performance, really, I think they managed their way through that World Cup. They could have lost the semi-final against Wales, which, you can look back and see some vulnerabilities there when they don't have the ball and you don't allow them bully you. The performance in the final against England was just at a different level. And for them to reach that emotional pitch again is going to be a challenge for them. So it just depends. I think it's 50-50. I think I fancy the Lions to do well, certainly to win a test. But it's a hard one to call then after that. Maybe if the Lions got the first test, I think they'd be in pole position. You know, that will be the real key for them.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. We've plenty of time to talk about that. Alan, thanks a million for joining us this morning. Best of luck today. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, lads.
Alan Quinlan giving us some thoughts on that. Who should start? So that would be four Irish in his Lions 15. So it's Tadhg Byrne at 6, Tadhg Furlong at 3, Conor Murray at 9, and Robbie Henshaw either at 12 or 13, depending on what they do. Which is about right, is it? Yeah, I think a lot of Irish people will absolutely take that, and that's a pretty good return for where Ireland are at the moment. Are you also in the Alan Quinlan age bracket, by the way?
No.
Or you're
No, not yet.
What's the situation here next week?
Yeah, well, whenever. They're not accepting your year of birth, not accepted.
Right. Okay. That's positive. Sorry to throw you in. I don't know what age Alan is. I definitely didn't Google it 5 minutes ago there when you said it. So right, we'll check in with you again, so Ger, whenever it does come to vaccination day.
Oh, don't worry, I'll be banging on about it. 9:05 this morning here on OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's what we got for you today on OTB Sports Radio. You can listen on desktop, OTB Sports Radio, otbsports.com/radio, or of course on the OTB Sports app. Centaur at 1 o'clock is the story of Declan Murphy, a remarkable tale of recovery from a horrific racing accident. State of the Union is Keith Wood, talking about what rugby should look like into the future. The Split Seasons, our documentary series from last year around the GAA season. And Dr. Harry Edwards talking about O.J. Simpson, inspirational stuff at 6 o'clock tonight. Then at 7 tonight, live OTB with Joe Malloy, looking back over the course of everything that happened over the weekend. We're back talking Gaelic football with Anthony Moyles next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Rugby podcasts? If not, here's some of what you've missed in the last week.
Since he has been suspended, I've had some interesting messages. My mum hasn't come out great from it. It's been interesting to say the least.
He would give it to you, and he gave it to me several times, and I was running around after him trying to kill him for the rest of the session.
Subscribe now to the OTB Rugby podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, or get the entire OTB catalogue on the OTB Sports app.
First up, a Go Loud original from Newstalk.
Get all the news you need to start your day with First Up, the podcast that brings you stories, analysis and interviews with the top newsmakers. First Up, available each weekday morning from 7 a.m. on Go Loud.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
7 minutes past 9 this morning. Time for us to turn our attention to Gaelic football. Anthony Moyles is with us this Monday morning. Anthony, how are you getting on?
Good, Ger, and yourself?
Yeah, we're excited about the quality of football we're seeing. Who knew that having the best teams play each other in summertime was the best way forward for the sport? Who knew this?
It's a massive surprise, I think, to so many people, that this could be unearthed. If only you had some semblance of thought over the last 15 or 20 years that maybe this could be tried out. But hey, here we are, and we've stumbled into it, and it is fantastic. There's teams being watched now that over the last 4 or 5 years, if I saw them on the TV, I'd just go, no, next. And I sat down to watch plenty of football over the weekend, and I was massively surprised. Derry and Cavan being one. I don't think I'd be a massive fan of how Derry played football over the last 5 or 6 years, but Jesus, a fantastic game over the weekend. End to end, some brilliant scores, some serious players, it's just a festival, Ger. That's what we're being, dished up at the moment. It's absolutely unbelievable.
I hate to make the champion, how much we can read into this for a championship argument immediately here, but on that Derry point, you look at Donegal at the moment, maybe without Michael Murphy, without a couple of other key players, they've got to get past Derry in a knockout championship, who absolutely have their tails up at the moment. I didn't see this Derry Cavan game. How good is this team?
Oh, I've been watching them. The last couple of weeks, the results, obviously, and what Gallagher has been trying to do. And I think Gallagher was, I suppose, with the Fermanagh situation, was tarnished with the brush of, well, he's just bringing that defensive situation that he brought and helped out with Donegal just into the Fermanagh situation. But I think he probably realised it was horses for courses to a certain degree with Fermanagh with regard to their forward power, and he obviously decided, well, listen, we're not going to leak too much in behind, so, and then what we can do on the break, we'll do that. But with Derry, he has some unbelievable ability in the forward line. Like there's a young lad, McGuigan, who's playing full forward, and he's as good as I've seen. I think he scored 8 points at the weekend. They've got a guy, Bradley, in midfield who kicked 3 unbelievable scores off his left foot at full pace. Like if you want to go back and just, you know, watch ball striking and ball striking from distance, and he's a unit, he's well able to move. Obviously, Glass is in midfield. That's the first time I've really seen him. And, you know, he's obviously a physical specimen, well able to motor around the pitch. But he does an awful lot of donkey work that's needed, you know, tracking back, dispossessing, kind of breaking up plays. He's a real force in that midfield. Derry always had very, very mobile midfielders, and this really fits the bill. So, you know, they're nice. They've transitioned from, they were always quite not defensive, sorry. They would work the ball out through hands, but previously they would actually bring it through midfield on hands, and say they'd have someone like Mark Lynch who would loop around, take the ball on, and then it'd be all intricate little passing. Whereas now they're kind of getting to a position maybe between the half back line and midfield, and then they're launching lovely balls in, you know, passes out in front of forwards, coming out at pace. They either have runners offside or they're well able to take their own men on. So, like, I mean, it's funny. That's not a foregone conclusion, that Donegal game. You know, I would, you know, if I'm Bonner, I'm thinking to myself, I'm watching these guys and saying, wow, these fellas need serious watching, because they've got great pace. They've got some serious forwards, as I say. As a defensive unit, they're well able to do it. Like, really, I thought Cavan were massively, you know, kind of lucky to get just whatever it was, a 4 or 5 point loss, because it could have been 10 points. Derry could have had 3 or 4 goals, certainly 2 goals in the first half. And, you know, they were 7 or 8 up. I think they took the foot off the gas a little bit. They gave away a really bad goal. But it's funny how a game can flip, because there was only 3 or 4 in it then. And Gallagher, I'd say, was tearing his hair out, kind of saying, Jesus, after all the hard work we've done, we could potentially slip up here. But a really sign of an unbelievable forward and a leader in the making was McGuigan won a ball out under the stand, out on the sideline, got it, turned the man, came through and kicked the score, and then kicked the next score, an unbelievable free, practically on the sideline after winning the free himself. So he got 2 scores when they badly needed, and that killed the game. So yeah, it's not like it's funny, you know, these games where you're pitting yourself, if you get a run in them, which obviously Derry are showing, you're bringing massive momentum into a championship match. And I know Donegal are going well, but, you know, like, I mean, should Armagh have beaten them at the weekend? I think Armagh ran out of steam, and Donegal, McBurty just stood up and hit some unbelievable scores to pull them back into it. But as you say, that's going to be a tricky enough affair for them.
Yeah, Shane McGuigan's the Slot Neil player. There was a story last year that Gavin Devlin had actually been working with Slot Neil, so he was getting a bit of other inter-county insight from a Tyrone coach at the time, obviously, and obviously you've been watching a lot more of him over the last little while than I have, but apparently he was very left-footed, and now this league campaign is kicking off both sides of the body, and you throw him in there, he's only 22 or 23, Conor Glass around the same age, I think, at this point, Anthony, that this is a team that isn't just geared up for this summer, that this is a real building job that we're witnessing. I think so, and you know, it's great to see them back. You know, Derry are a powerhouse. You know, certainly when I played, you know, you go up there and the likes of the players that they had, Sean Marty Lockhart and all the different lads, the Scullins, just they always had class all over the pitch. As I said, usually a very, very mobile unit, especially around the middle, and some great forwards. But it was always going to be a tricky affair. They always had a great attitude to playing football, and I think for a long time there they lost their way. You know, it might have been 7-8 years. They were seen as, I think, a little bit of cannon fodder really up there. They had a real lack of kind of, it seemed, togetherness. Fellas being pulled off different directions. You know, when it really came down to the fight, they were lacking. So it's excellent to see this now. Cavan didn't help themselves at all. They set up absolutely terribly against them, and handed them an awful lot. And to be honest with you, as far as conditioning went, you know, Derry
just kept going and going and going. And when Cavan tried to lift it, Derry lifted it again. So, he's doing a lot of right things. And I have to say, it's a trajectory that's massively on the way up rather than anywhere going flatlining or on the way down.
Can I ask you a general question before we get into the Armagh Donegal match? Why is the quality of football so good at the moment? What is it about where we are in the evolution of the sport that is seeing teams try and attack? The skill level seems to be quite high. We're seeing outrageous points from all 4 divisions. What's going on?
Yeah, I think that was always there, Ger, in the last number of years. First of all, teams are much better prepared. Players are much better prepared. Players themselves are into it a lot more. They don't see training as just going and getting flogged and blah, blah, blah. They're researching an awful lot more. So physically, they're much better. They're in better shape. Athletically, they're in much better shape. Even from 10 years ago. Okay, so they're able to go harder, run faster. They're able to take hits better. They're able to move around players better. Their ability to transition the ball is much better. All of those things, and then skill levels are improving. So we spoke about this the last time about how the games administration and different people have decided to try to set different rules and bring in. Try to alter the game to try and disrupt strategies that were used. Well, that's just how games develop, and I can see a situation. We were talking last week about goalkeepers, how important goalkeepers have become, and I think you're going to see more and more of that. That goalkeepers are going to be basically an outfield player. The ability to maybe. If I was managing a team, as soon as the goalkeeper would get a ball, you often see this where a defender will come in and take the ball off the goalkeeper. Why would you do that? You're bringing a forward in, and you're essentially now becoming 2 players rather than 1. So what you'd actually do is you'd actually get all your defenders to split out as far as you could and create a funnel, create a tunnel right down the middle of the pitch for the goalkeeper just to go, and let him keep going. And have an ability that you have like a fly goalkeeper. You have a defender who can just sit back if needs be. And if the goalkeeper goes up there, he doesn't have to run all the way 60 yards back. He can just slip in and maybe just stand in there, because a lot of defenders, you have some man-marking defenders, but you also then have some defenders who are just necessarily in space. So that's, I think, the next transition. And what would kill me is, and you could see it, that someone in some rules body says, a goalkeeper can't go past the 21, So the game has to develop, innovation has to come into it. And I think what you've seen recently is that teams and managers and coaches have decided, okay, we can set up relatively defensively and get ourselves set, but we need to be able to transition the ball, and we need to have forwards who have the ability to at pace kick scores over the bar, and who can, intricately kind of pass the ball and at pace be able to kick off left or right. The importance of having left and right of the forward is unbelievable now, especially if you have a defender there, but you also have another extra defender there who can potentially take you off if you're right-footed. So I just think the game is in a very, very good place. I don't think it's anything to do with, to be honest with you, I think the rule changes over the last while. I was scratching my head last night thinking of the rule changes. What rule change has come in that has actually aided the game? And over the last several years, I don't honestly think there is one. Even the black card, I'm not so sure about that.
What about the kick-out? Go on.
That's what I was going to say. The kick-out mark is the only thing I would maybe...
Not even the mark, the fact that you can't kick it inside your own 13 anymore.
That has helped, but what you see an awful lot now is a team will concede just that small kick out just outside the top of the D, where a guy will just come in, they'll just pop it there left and right. Slightly, maybe that one. But the people say about the black card, it has stopped cynical fouling. Well, if the yellow card was used correctly, in my day, if I got a yellow card, I was like, okay, and I saw you, Ger, coming in at me, I was thinking, I'm going to have to be careful. Whereas if I didn't have the yellow card, I'd be thinking something else. So you have to, the black card, if it's in the last minute of a game, the whole Sean Kavanagh thing, whether he gets a black card, a yellow card, or a red card, he's still doing that foul. It doesn't make a difference. He's still taking one for the team. He's still stopping that player. So the mark out the field, the offensive mark, more and more and more, you can see teams that they're just not deploying it. Guys are actually forgetting about it. I would imagine managers and coaches are just saying, listen, when we play the game in training, just play it. don't worry about this offensive mark, because it's more confusing than anything, you know. So look, I think the game's in a great place. It's fantastic to see. I think fellas are really enjoying. You know, it's funny. You're seeing players, you know, express themselves. I was watching Benny Heron, who's a Derry player and has been there for a long number of years. And my poor old memory of Benny would just be that he was like a lad on a track, just up and down and up and down and up and down. And the poor fella, I'd say he must have run about 25 miles in every game, just up and down. And like, I mean, sick of running. And I was delighted to see him get a couple of scores, because he actually played as a forward the other day. And I'd say he has a new lease of life, just kind of going, this is fantastic, you know? So it's look, I think it's in great. I just hope no one starts tinkering with things. Actually, as a matter of fact, they should start stripping back some of those rules they brought in over the last while. That would be a great thing. I saw Tomas O'Shea mention it, and it really would, because like just let the game flow and let managers work out things and have tactics and strategies around it.
And I think a lot of those rule changes were a reaction to negative tactics. Negative tactics are a natural reaction to fear, and fear is a natural reaction to championship structure, which is weighted against so many of the counties in Ireland anyway. So I don't know. I think you're dead right there, and Tomas O'Shea is right in trying to scale back things. Just John, Armagh Donegal, a 1-16 apiece draw on Saturday night. Like there was this real sense of disappointment around Armagh last year, I felt, Anthony, where there is this collection of really talented young players who we thought could really put it up to Donegal, and they fell completely flat in that Ulster Championship game. Have you seen concrete proof this year during the league that that's not going to happen to them again this year?
I think so, Owen. It's funny, if you remember that game, it was literally done and dusted within 10 minutes. Do you remember? Like, I mean, they just got absolutely blown out. And I'd say McGeaney went into this one and he said, well, the one thing we're not going to do is we're not going to start slowly. So they came out of the blocks. They had Donegal and real bother. We spoke a little bit about them, the O'Neill lads, different players that they have. I think they have an awful lot of talent. I do take this point that they are, you know, they're leaving kind of two men up front, maybe three sometimes, but mostly two, kind of at 11 and 14. And then they try to transition and get the ball up into space. It is tiring, and on a night like Saturday, they definitely ran out of legs. You could see it. You know, they were absolutely out on their feet in that last 7 or 8 minutes, and Donegal just started picking them off. I think, you know what, I don't think McGeaney will worry too much about that. I think he'll actually go, you know what, I can work on that, and I can work on, you know, putting the foot down on the accelerator and then taking it off at times and trying to control things. Like, you see the better teams, you know, Kerry's and the Dublins of this, that they'll burst for 5 or 6 minutes, and then when they get the ball, they'll just control things a little bit. They'll kick it about a bit. They'll give everyone a bit of a breather. They'll start to probe a bit in the left. They'll come back in the centre, and they'll just start to, as I say, give everyone a little bit of a chance to catch their breath. Whereas Armagh was kind of full throttle nearly for 50, 55 minutes, and it eventually caught them. I think they're on a, just like Derry, I think they're really improving. They're a big physical team. They've got some really nice natural footballers. They play a nice brand of football on attacking wise. I think McGeaney will be very happy, and I think he'll just say to himself, you know what, we can sort this out. We'll go in bursts rather than being full throttle, as I say. And I think, again, they're a team over the next few years that will really, really compete.
We're in real danger of Ulster breaking away to form a Super League at this point. This is going to be like the best summer of football from the province of all time. Just on Cork against Clare as well, I know we're hopping around here a little bit, but I know you were watching this game. I was watching this game yesterday. It probably was maybe the biggest game of the weekend in many senses, that I guess there was an opportunity to get top spot, an opportunity to play Meath for a place in Division 1. Like, we know how competitive Division 2 has been over the last little while. I'm not sure did Clare realise at the end how significant it was that Cork score. Maybe they had the 4 point swing in their head all game, and maybe losing by a point didn't really hit home with them. But facing Mayo as opposed to Meath in 2 weeks' time is a far tougher task for Colm Collins and this Clare group of footballers who are going so well at the moment.
It is, and they play some fantastic football. You know, they had Cork in bother at lots of times. Cork, it reminded me kind of a boxing match, you know, where both of them were just kind of, you know, landing jabs every now and again, but no one really hit that killer punch. Both teams, Look, I think Clare have done a remarkable job. He has built an unbelievable spirit within that squad. You can see it. He's bringing in fellas that are, I'm not saying they're average footballers, but they're workhorses. But they know the system, they know their job, they know what's required of them. They don't try to do anything different. They completely accept the task that they've been given, and they find the fellas who can kick points, and they generally get the ball to them. Tuberty was just, I have to say, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. For a guy who's shown a little bit of grey around the sides, it was refreshing to see him. He just reminds me of a lad who just, he just kind of steps out there. His free taken off the ground, it's not a very technically kind of, you wouldn't put it up there and kind of say, this is how you kick a free, but he's as successful. He just sticks down, bang, over the bar. Some of his point scoring from hand was brilliant. He ran out of a bit of steam, but he's a guy who, if I had him, I'd be saying, listen, don't even bother running back, just stay up front, because he's lethal. And you know what, they've done remarkably well. They'll give a go against Mayo, but you're right, I don't think they really, if they had just pushed on that a little bit more, and as you say, had that in their head that potentially there was the game against Meath, because even last year they gave Meath a good rattle, and if we're going on the recent results, obviously a game against Meath would have been more favourable for them. But look, I think he'd be very, very happy. They as a squad will be very, very happy, and again, their trajectory is moving upwards rather than any other way.
The other stuff in the weekend that we kind of need to pay some attention to is the fact that Galway didn't get blown out, that they seem to have, in the space of 3 weeks, realised that it's possible to graft on a defensive structure that will prevent you conceding goals. Is this important? Does this matter?
Not really. I think Dublin were in, second to third gear, I think, at times. I wouldn't be reading too much into it. I think there was a number of dead rubbers that was in there to a certain degree. I just think, Gerard, that Galway the first day, as I said, remember we covered it, they came out against Kerry, and you don't come out against Kerry with lack of intensity, and they came out with no intensity, and they were just absolutely blown to smithereens. The next day they had to respond. I'm not so sure. I don't know. I really don't know where this Galway team is. I watched Roscommon again against Kerry. I think Roscommon are motoring well. I think they've been unlucky, but I think Cunningham will be happy with what they're doing. They have some good firepower up front. Murta is shooting the lights out. They've got some nice intricate play. They mix long ball with short ball, very, very nice. They've got a good solid defence. They're improving big time. They've got good runners. There's sometimes a little bit one trick, where they have the runners coming from midfield. But at the same time, they're putting up big scores against good teams. And ultimately they had a very tough group. So that Connacht is going to be tricky. It really is. Like, Mayo have been going about their business very, very well. And I didn't see the game, but I believe against Meath, they were impressive. The game was over obviously at half time, and Meath made a lot of changes, and probably showed that Mayo have an awful lot more depth. But Galway, for me, this is a tricky time for Pádraig. There's no doubt in my mind that Pádraig is a winner, and he demands that his team are winners. But I think when he stands up in front of that team and he says, we could win an All-Ireland, which he came out with a number of months ago, or maybe 6 or 9 months ago, and says that he doesn't think that Galway should be up there and challenging. I think that Pádraig believes that. He absolutely 100% believes it. My question, though, is do the players, and do all the players, really believe it? And sometimes when I watch them, I kind of think it could go either way, and that's something that they really have to get over. They have to get that consistency in, and be a team like a la Mayo that just will always give it to you no matter what. Like, they will be competing right to the very end.
You mentioned that performance from Roscommon yesterday. There's a couple of interesting things that they did which maybe will be important in the context of Kerry as we go into this summer. So after weekend one, Anthony, everybody was kind of glorifying Kerry for their gegenpressing or heavy metal football, as Joe Brawley put it in his article, about the fact that them pressing your kick out is their avenue into getting the best out of themselves. But what Roscommon and Dublin have done over the last couple of weeks, they've actually turned that into a weakness for Kerry, because once Kerry are pressed up and the goalkeeper goes long and you win that kick out, as Enda Smith and Tiger O'Rourke did on a couple of occasions yesterday, then you just turn around and you lump that ball right in on that Kerry full back line. We obviously saw Conor O'Callaghan getting one over Paul Murphy in that avenue 2 weeks ago, or last weekend, and then we saw, I think, Roscommon getting a point or two off that avenue as well yesterday. At the same time, when Kerry dropped bodies back after they went down to 14 men yesterday, they conceded the goal after that. So maybe Peter Keane just comes away from yesterday thinking to himself, we know the weakness that comes as a result of us pushing up into kick out, but look, we're just going to have to live with it, and the greater outcome may come as a result of the weakness that we'll expose for ourselves.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I watched it intently again, obviously, because I think it's actually fantastic to see how. So what's happening in Kerry is obviously the focus is on all the forwards, but actually the real battle and the real strategy and the real plan and everything is around what's actually happening in the defence. And that's what's keeping Peter Keane up at night with his management team. He knows that Clifford and all the rest of the boys up there will do what they need to do. But the defensive, we spoke last week about them not syncing with the ball, and what I mean by that is that they're kind of getting caught with their back to the play sometimes, and they're not realizing that there's players around them. So fellas are tunnel vision, looking at a guy with a ball and not realizing that there's actually a free man here. Now, whose fault is that? Is it me with my back to the guy, or is it another guy behind me not calling me? And again, it happened. If you look back in that Roscommon game, there was a number of times where players were tracking players. But then as the Roscommon player came across the middle, the Kerry guy stopped and kind of reverted to kind of just going back into in around the top of the D, just like, okay, I'm here, but I'm not really here. Whereas the Roscommon guy tracked, kept running and was found with little dinky balls over the top. And that's, it's not laziness, okay? I don't think they're lazy defenders, but I just think there's a lack of awareness of, first of all, if I'm tracking a guy and that is my job, well, then I have to track him no matter where he goes. If I'm playing zonal and I'm playing in a defence that's going to sink and move across left and right as the ball does that, well, then I'm doing that. But who's marking the danger men? And I think there's a lack of understanding of where the actual danger is. A lot of Roscommon guys from the half back and the full back line were punching holes, and 3 or 4 Kerry guys would collapse in on him, and then he'd just slip out a hand pass to the likes of Murta, and Murta would just come around the loop and bang over the bar. Instead of realising, look, this guy's probably not going to kick the ball after running 40 yards. He's not going to stick this over the bar. So we'll shepherd him with one player, and then we'll also pick up all the danger guys around the edge. And for some of the guys, I know they had a couple of fellas in the defence that wouldn't normally be there, but it's a lesson for them. And you know, they're going to score 114, 115 off you. That's just a given. I think that's in them nearly every week. The problem is, are they going to concede 215 or 216? And if you can sort that out, and I still haven't seen a real solidity in there yet that would tell me that actually Dublin at full pace, or indeed Mayo at full pace, that they can really start to, kind of lock them down. There's plenty of holes still there. I think he's still toying with, are we man marking some guys? Are we zonal sometimes? So he's got a bit of work to do.
And I think the reason why there were a couple of new faces in there, Anthony, was because they're being tested out to see if they can be the guy who locks down a defence. This is all part of the very conversation that you raise. Tyrone is going to be a very interesting matchup for them then in 2 weeks' time. This is, I guess, something that's been forgotten about a little bit from the 2019 summer, was that Tyrone really had them on the rack for a large period of that game before Kerry kicked on in that second half of that semi-final. They have since then come together and put together a far more impressive forward line since then, an attacking style of play that will give most defences a runaround, let alone a defence that is struggling to find its identity.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with you, and also quite a physically imposing forward line. Roscommon's forward line yesterday, a lot of guys of similar kind of stature and height, a lot of speed, a lot of jinkiness. Tyrone will be much more direct, and I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for that Kerry defence, to be honest with you. they have been caught, as you say. You look back at the Conor Callaghan goal, okay, it was on Murphy, but there's been a number of high balls that have gone in there that have just caused major panic. Even there was one or two yesterday that they got away with, but I think they got away with it out of luck. There wasn't any I didn't feel there was a kind of a composure, assuredness of, one of them just calling it and grabbing it out of the air and everyone else on the ground waiting for breaks. There was just kind of like we're all going for it. There was a sense of panic around. So that's going to be a big one for him. It is going to be big, and Tyrone will absolutely want to take a scalp there, because they will figure that as this is us putting a marker down, because it's a big game for them.
Yeah.
They need to prove themselves over the last number of weeks.
No, 100%. Listen, the clock is a little bit against us, but we will get in a good bit more detail about Tyrone and where they are, because it is one of those stories, that revolution that's happened there as well. Anthony, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, lad. No bother.
They are scoring for fun at the moment. Right, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Congratulations to Conor O'Neill, who called for Man City and Pep to make the Gillette performance rankings for not picking Rodri or Fernandinho to start. You've won a Gillette starter pack, and we will be in touch with the details on that. Join us tomorrow morning on OTB AM live from 7:30. We're talking to Irish para swimmer Nicole Turner. There's our first Gaelic football power rankings of 2021 and much more as well. Right now, we're going to bring you more reactions to the weekend sport. Here's Michael Keefe and Tommy Conlon from the Sunday Paper Review with Joe.
So one other story in the front pages, actually, I meant to mention. It's on the front page of the Sunday Times and the Mail on Sunday, just on Robbie Keane's contract situation, Mick. So Keane nears resolution to stand off with FAI. I think people are pretty familiar with this story at this stage. Robbie Keane signed a 4-year deal with the FAI in 2018 to bring him up to 2022. In April 2020, so halfway through, I guess, he was informed that Stephen Kenny wouldn't be taking him on board or didn't need his services, and in effect he hasn't really had anything to do, but was still very much under contract. So this is Paul Rowan here in the Sunday Times. FAI Chief Executive Jonathan Hill is said to be making substantial progress in resolving their standoff with Robbie Keane after he was dropped last year by Stephen Kenny. So Roy Barrett, the FAI chairman, there's ongoing dialogue with Robbie and Jonathan, and we'll see what comes of that. We should have an outcome in the not too distant future. And on the Mail on Sunday, they just say, meanwhile, Robbie Keane's contract situation at the FAI should be resolved soon. According to Barrett, there's ongoing dialogue. The same quotes there. I mean, I guess make this thing's resolved soon one way or the other. I mean, the thing's nearly up at this stage. We're nearly into 2022.
Yeah, and look, it's one of John Delaney's parting gifts by the looks of things. And, what I was surprised at, and I didn't realise this was the number, I thought it was a little bit less, was the 250,000 per annum. Like, when you think about the finances of the FAI and you think about the prize money in the league and everything like that, it's just an astonishing waste for someone who's not doing any work, so I think there has been chatter around trying to give him another job. They spoke about this 100-year anniversary in some kind of ambassadorial role. It does seem that this has gone personal, which, as you see, he seems to have been quite hurt by the way he was treated, so it's more a point of principle than anything else, so he might just sit it out.
It says here in the Sunday Times, it was thought Keane, as you mentioned, Mick, might fulfil an ambassadorial role in the forthcoming celebrations, though sources close to Keane dismissed that situation or that suggestion last night. This was agreed with John Delaney, this contract, in 2018, even though Mick McCarthy had only signed a 2-year contract. His salary around 250,000 a year. That is the original sin here, isn't it, Tommy? That John Delaney and the FAI, in their wisdom, a parting gift, as Mick O'Keefe says there, gave Mick McCarthy a 2-year contract and decided it would be a good idea to give Robbie Keane a 4-year contract. So it just created a mess here. And obviously, I mean, when Robbie Keane's dropped the way he was dropped, he's going to feel hurt by the whole thing. And I suspect Mick is right when he says things got personal.
I suspect so too. And it is one of the legacy issues left over from the Delaney regime. As you see, Robbie Keane is perfectly entitled to the money. The contract is legit. And he's not doing anything wrong in that sense. But it is very, very embarrassing for him. He has been essentially on gardening leave for 12 months through no fault of his own. But Stephen Kenny didn't want him involved in his backroom staff, as we know. And so Robbie's had 12 months doing nothing. and taking a $250,000 from an organisation that is essentially insolvent, that has something like 70 million in debt. And I think Robbie Keane should have walked away with last year, sorted out something, even from his own sense of pride or honour. If I'm not wanted, I'll leave us know if you're not wanted somewhere, you leave, you walk away. And maybe hammered out some sort of an agreement, but he could afford, one would imagine, the financial loss, and the FAI cannot afford to be paying $250,000 to someone who isn't, through no fault of his own, but still is not doing any work for it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think, Tommy, though, it comes down to it comes back to how public the humiliation was. So he's more or less told his face didn't fit and he wasn't fit for purpose. And I think he took that quite personally, and it was dragged out in very public glare of the media, and I think he's probably just sitting there going, well, look, this is my revenge. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't want to be redeployed, one better way of saying it. So, I think he was quite hurt at how the news was relayed to himself as well, which seemed to have been post-leak over a phone call. Yeah. So, in saying that, you've Jonathan Hill has gone in there, who has an enormous job in his hands, who's doing his best, who doesn't need this hassle either. So you'd like to think that he could come to his senses and do something for the greater good. And even if you to give the money back and ring fence it for the development of women's football or the league or something, you could do something to come out well out of this.
And doing something for pig iron, for out of a sense of grievance isn't. I think we'd mostly agree isn't a great idea either. And I take your point, Mick, that he was hurt by it. But in professional football, as we all know, people are routinely fired and got rid of and hurt. I mean, it's everyday realities of fellas being not getting contracts renewed, getting players not getting contracts renewed. It's as we know, everyone is a disposable in that industry, and one would have thought, therefore, that Robbie would have been a bit more thick-skinned about the realities of a sport he's been in for 20 years.
Yeah, the only difference, Tommy, though, is look, and this is a fellow with over 100 caps for Ireland, record goals scorer. He hadn't done anything wrong. Like, he hadn't done anything.
Agreed.
Was the point. So he wasn't. The difference here is that he wasn't. This wasn't a performance-based issue, or this was just something that was poorly handled. Stephen Kenny was fully entitled to say, I didn't want him on my team, but surely they could have done something in the background. This is like, it was humiliating for, let's be honest, and he's not a guy that always gets the plaudits that he should have got. One of our greatest players of all time. And he gets to read about him being stepped down from a position without having any chance to prove himself. They should have done something. They should have handled it so much better than how they handled it.
Agreed.
In saying that, now he's the chance to get the upper to get the moral high ground and actually sort it out if he wants to, because no one wants to see the FAI down 250 grand a year when the money could be going somewhere else.
Well, his agent refused to comment for the piece. As to what Keane's motivations are, we don't really know, or what his thinking is, we don't really know. To be fair to him, he may come out in due course and explain his side of the story. But this just came up in Sunday Papers briefing with the FAI. That's how it came up. So we'll see what Robbie Keane has to say about the whole situation, I would think, at some stage in the future in due course. But it's on the front page there, the Sunday Times, and the back page of the Mail on Sunday. It is a lot of money, obviously, 250 grand a year, and same next year until the contract is up. Chelsea against Man City. A really good game, I thought, Tommy. What about the pieces in the paper today? What are they making of it?
Thoroughly enjoyed it, Joe. I think I get the sense that most people were pleasantly surprised at how dramatic it was, packed with action and incident, attacking play. There was the usual residual fear, as there is around these big set-piece occasions, that you could have stagnation through pure caution and fear and conservatism. And but the match reports, I mean, as someone who's done his stint at the front line doing live match reports, I've an abiding respect for every single sports reporter who is on a late night deadline of a live football match. It's incredibly stressful, and I have bottomless admiration for the people who do as well. And so I often, just out of more professional sort of curiosity, one of the things I'll do on a Sunday is just compare and contrast how various reporters handled that stress and managed to deliver, the best pieces, the best reports, and once again, the standard is top notch, like across the papers, or at least the ones I've read, the Sunday Times, the Telegraph, the Mail on Sunday, the Independent, the UK Independent, you know, and these fellas are churning out these match reports under ridiculous pressure, and even trying to get all your facts in a row is one thing, but trying to write, you know, stylish prose and or even do a coherent report would be adequate. But some of them are capable of writing actually very composed pieces, as if they had a couple of days to write it. And it's invidious, I suppose, but to name individuals, but in Ireland, I mean, I actually had a bit of a Twitter spat with Rory Smith of the New York Times a couple of years ago. He was tweeting about the pressures and about the job of doing live deadline match reporting, and the thread followed on various contributors, and I chipped in, maybe a little bit uncollegially of me, to say that there is no more stressful match reporting situation than a hurling game, and I've done it a few times. It's horrendous, and because apart in football, for example, you will get normally a low scoring game, and you can have your head down at your laptop typing out paragraphs because you don't have necessarily much to record of live action. Whereas in hurling, for example, you're trying to compose your intro, then there's a point scored, so you have to record the point, and then back to your laptop again, and then you're distracted again, another point, and there could be 50 or 60 scores, 10 substitutions, all sorts going on, and get all that done more or less on the final whistle.
So Tommy, I thought with your big budgets there in the Indo that you'd have an army of statisticians there doing that stuff, you know.
If only, Mick. If only. You know what? Someone still has to write the report, Mick. You know, you can't have a committee doing that, like. And so it was from that point of view I was looking at it. And as I was saying, the standard is really, really good. Sam Wallace, in particular, in the Telegraph, I thought was excellent, and even allowing for how good he was. I mean, there's a couple of mistakes in the copy, and that is not at all remotely anything to do with his professionalism or ability. It's actually a superb match report. It's just that the pure stress of the time he had meant that there was just a couple of things of errors that weren't picked up, very minor. And if you go through across all the page, or at least the sports pages I've read, the standard of reportage, writing, coherent, where all relevant facts and all relevant incidents. There's a mixture of analysis in the reportage to do with Guardiola's team selection, and in report after report, these top professionals have managed to capture a lot of the essence of the night. Yeah.
So I've Graham Souness here, for instance, as an analysis piece, page 3 of the Sunday Times. It's both good and bad. I turned to Souness because I wanted to see what did he make of, for the first time in 60 games, Pep going without a Fernandinho or a Rodri. I thought, well, Souness as a midfielder will be interesting in this. So he doesn't get there at first. He starts off by saying, Manchester City, the best group of players I've seen in British football in my 50 years, talks about how difficult it must be for Pep to pick a team. But then he talks about Tuchel, says it was a modern masterclass tactically, great effort for the Premier League. Chelsea made more of less possession. They looked more threatening than City did. Talked about the distances between their centre half and the centre forward. Could have only been 25 yards. It was extremely compact, hard to break down. Chelsea brought City onto them and then sprung from there. That was exactly how Kai Havertz scored his goal just before half-time. Talked about how brilliant Mason Mount is. He really loves Mount, and said N'Golo Kante was my man of the match. He was everywhere, putting out fires against City's midfield. On the flanks, Ben Chilwell had Riyad Mahrez in his pocket. Reece James did the same with Raheem Sterling on the other side of the pitch. I thought that was all really interesting, good stuff. You could see City getting frustrated as the match wore on. He says as well then of the Rodri Fernandinho omissions. He just said City think they can outgun anyone in any game, and that explains why Guardiola started with neither Fernandinho nor Rodri, his two holding midfielders, and then sent on Fernandinho for De Bruyne when he was chasing the game. And then he just moves on to Phil Foden. Phil Foden played in midfield. He's going to be a great player. He's going to do well at the Euros, etc. And I kind of think, well, Graham, like, tell me what you think here. Is this the reason they lost the game? Was this a ridiculous mistake? I mean, I know why he picked them. What do you think of it? So I was kind of touch disappointed with Souness there. I wanted to know, did he think Pep had screwed this up, or it was just very understandable and wasn't the winning or losing of the game? Like, for instance, you turn the page over and it's Henry Winter, and his line is very much Guardiola's gamble fails on biggest stage of all. Even the most confident and sure of foot can stumble. Even such refined minds as Guardiola can cloud over. Why hadn't he started Fernandinho? He's 36, still a vital force. It looked almost arrogance by Guardiola, says Henry Winter, omitting his chief dog of war, relying on creative types in the engine room. Appeared a mistake at kick-off and looked calamitous as Thomas Tuchel's better organised Chelsea took control. Tuchel kept it simple, playing players in the right positions. N'Golo Kante ran the show, etc. I'd love to know, does Souness feel that strongly about it? But you don't quite know based on today. Mick, what did you take from it all?
I was really interested in this, and kind of not quite to Tommy's forensic kind of examination of the reports, but I had a look at the analysis, particularly in the UK press, the BBC and the Guardian and other places, and they're all saying the same thing, which is interesting post-match around, it seems to be quite black and white. This kind of, analysis favours the victorious a little bit here. So it's all about Tuchel, tactical masterclass, tactical battle. I think Souness, for me, it kind of half reads like he rang this in. Like it doesn't he doesn't go into deep detail on the why. He keeps it at kind of very high level, I think. He touches on a few of the themes that we've spoken about. Kante, nice thing about how compact they were and how difficult it is to actually do that. And it was a masterclass in terms of being able to blunt the opposition. And when you have someone like Kante, who's a defensive holding midfielder, getting man of the match, well, then that kind of shows you. I did like the Henry Winter piece more on page 5 of the Sunday Times. Because he kind of goes, all guns blazing here on Guardiola, to a point where he more than strongly hints that Guardiola's, he overthought it, was trying to be too clever, and there was a kind of a smidgen of arrogance about how he set the team up. It was kind of like, you guys are going to set up defensively, we're going to come out with a load of creative players in the team, we're going to pass around you and we're going to beat you. Whereas actually, in hindsight, what is proven is that he really should have started with a better balanced side, and then by the time he actually got his team right, it was too late. Is the theme I'm reading in that piece. Now, he did another, and I think it is in this article as well, that the way he set himself up, Tuchel, that is, was a victory for simplicity and discipline, and actually that's a theme that runs through some of the GA pieces that come as well, and that really the Guardiola thing was just about overthinking and been trying to be too clever, and actually it's quite stinging. I actually think that Henry Winter piece on page 5 of the Sunday Times. And he goes into fairly not aggressive is the wrong word, but it's fairly sharp in places,
Well, it's now Tommy placed alongside the Lyon quarter-final last year on Pep's part. His neuroticism almost getting the better of him, his genius, his overthinking. Tuchel got into his head with the FA Cup defeat and he panicked. He didn't hold his nerve, is the way this has been portrayed. I mean, I get that, and Fernandinho, I'm sure, may have been 10 yards further along than Gundogan was and maybe would have intercepted that ball. Who knows? I guess the point it overlooks, though, where I worry it gets a bit too simplistic, is that it overlooks the fact City still didn't actually score. I mean, okay, anyone can concede a goal, that happens, but City didn't score a goal in this game. I'm not sure if Fernandinho, even though he played a lovely through ball at one stage, is he the creative force they were missing? So there is that aspect to this as well.
You'd wonder, you see, sometimes you'd wonder, did Guardiola's selection, when he announced that to his team, now you'd like to know, when was it at Friday training, when does he normally sit down the team in the dressing room and name it, because that's the time when you'll ever get a more silent dressing room in any sport than when the manager is naming the team. And I wonder, did this decision out of left field did it spook the horses? Did it frighten the horses a bit? Beyond the issue, Joe, I take your point about Fernandinho. They still didn't score a goal, so maybe it didn't matter that much. But I wonder psychologically, did it frighten the horses a little bit?
Yeah.
They're very highly strung, these thoroughbreds, and you just wonder, did it just cloud their minds? Did it sow a seed of unease? And did that ripple through the team? And there was apparent confusion even in the, if you're to take out the psychological or emotional aspect of it, if you're to looking at them at the normal systematic pass and move that they usually, it was just a bit, it was a bit clouded. It just wasn't quite functioning at the normal rhythm. And the contrast then with Tuchel's team, what I thought was he sent out a team absolutely brilliantly prepared, psychologically, emotionally, and sometimes that is just done by an appeal to the emotions of the team, but sometimes it's also because they love the formation he has picked. They love the idea, and that makes them feel secure in themselves. And we could all see it for last night. He had a very condensed configuration between his defence, his midfield and his forward line, about 25 metres between them, and they managed to condense the Man City, otherwise deadly Man City pass and move game into that sort of rectangle, and the Chelsea players seemed to absolutely believe in it and know exactly what each person was doing and performed accordingly.
Yeah, agree with that. Total clarity. And I think as well, Mick, everybody now has Kante in their World 11 at the moment.
It makes you think about France as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I do think though with these things, look, Guardiola is a brilliant manager, and you know, he always tries to set his teams up to play. And I know Soon alluded to the analogy of having too many dresses to wear, and maybe you pick the wrong costume, because he has a whole embarrassment of riches in his squad.
But isn't it so striking though, when of 60 games this year, he's either had a Rodri or a Fernandinho in 59 of them?
Yeah.
And this is the first time this starting 11 had ever played together. Like I thought, Mick, I thought Foden looked a bit lost in that deeper three.
Foden looked lost. He started Sterling, who hasn't really been, his face hasn't fitted this year either. But I do think though in these games, circumstance can lead to the way a game plays out, obviously. So like if Chelsea scored first, the way they set themselves up, it was always going to be really difficult to break them down.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think we can be very clever after the fact.
Yeah.
Look, of course, you look at it now and you say, should he have set up differently? Why wouldn't he have played Fernandinho or Rodri? And you kind of go, yeah, he should have, right? But that's been wise now. So he's thinking there ahead of the match on Thursday or Friday or wherever the time is. He's thinking about how he's going to play around them. He's putting trust in his flair players. He's starting Sterling, Foden, De Bruyne. You know, like there's not probably a more potent ball playing force in the moment, like those fellas. So, you know, I can understand the logic of what he did. In hindsight, look, obviously he's got it wrong. You know?
No, totally agree with that. Totally agree with the hindsight. And in advance, I mean, it was very possible to say, well, look at the bravery of this selection. Wow, he's going to imbue his whole team with such confidence, etc. We are definitely Sunday morning quarterbacking. Sorry, Tommy. Last one.
Sorry to cut across you, Joe. But there was a lot of a lot of observers and pundits were flagging it up from the moment
that's true. Brian Kerr and Niall Quinn were raising more than an eyebrow in Virgin anyway.
There was a lot of people. There was a lot of people online and elsewhere wondering in advance: has he out? And I think Matt Dickinson in the Sunday Times, and one of the guys here talks about that. There was a sense that maybe he was trying. He knew that Tuchel was coming up with something, and that he was trying to outmaneuver the manoeuvre.
Yeah.
And maybe not to second guess Tuchel, but almost to third guess him. And it's not necessarily hindsight. Joe, there was a lot of concern, I thought one line from Tuchel afterwards was very telling. He said, "We wanted to put a stone in their shoe. We wanted to put a stone in the Manchester City clockwork. And put a stone in the machine."
Yeah.
And they did it.
They sure did.
But I'd much rather be a season ticket holder of Man City than Chelsea. Like, you know, I'd rather go watch Man City to be honest with you. But the other thing that's interesting in the analysis, sorry, one last point, Joe, is, and I found it interesting as well in the post-match interviews, is the 3 English players in the Chelsea team played particularly well. And I think Chelsea is a club who has had a lot of imported players, but if you look at the great Chelsea teams of a decade ago where they would have had a spine of English players, I think it was interesting to note a 21, 22 and 24-year-old backbone in essentially the Chelsea team. Some of them are homegrown. And I think it also, would point to, and I know it's not for now, but, the amount of young talent the English national team has at this moment in time, and what a cracking chance they have if they get their team right in the summer.
Yeah, very much so.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and